Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Logan Bailey.
Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast, Football Edition, Week 5. Brought to you by our primary sponsor, 3Chord. I'm your host, Logan Bailey, and joined today again by Keith Brown, AJ Fairchild, and Tony Fairchild. So again, thanks for coming on, guys. And, we're officially up to the halfway point in the season. What are your thoughts going into this week?
Just crazy. It's week 5 already. It's nuts. Very exciting week 1 in conference play last week, and obviously we'll get into that. But man, season's flying by. But boy, it was beautiful out tonight. We had a game tonight. The weather is just absolutely beautiful.
We're really turning into that fall football weather right now. But yeah, you're right. It's flying by, and a lot of excitement in week 1 of conference play. So I can't wait to get into some of these game recaps.
Yep, we talked about it almost every week. Can't believe it's week 1. Can't believe it's week 2, and we're seriously halfway through the regular season of the high school football season. It's amazing.
I guess the thing I could never understand is why does it seem like football season and fall? I feel like it goes faster than any other time of the year. Like literally, it's just you blink and you're halfway through, and we just keep on marching week after week. And I don't know. I think it's got to be just the anticipation. Football's only one game a week, and you kind of build up excitement, and then once you get there, you restart over and over again. So.
It's seriously like every week in basketball, you do, you scheme to what the team's going to do. But I mean, football, it's a completely different scheme every single week. You're not doing the same thing necessarily. I mean, offensively you are, but defensively you're doing something different just about every week. Yep. So it's crazy.
Definitely an exciting time of year.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. Let's move on and see how we did for last week's picks. Kind of interesting. Everyone was either number 1 or number 2 last week. So actually, Tony, Matthew, and Logan all finished 14-3. Keith, Bryce, and AJ all finished 13-4. And on the year, Tony is leading with a 55-20 record. Good for one ahead of Matthew. So another spotlight to Tony. Any words of wisdom?
Yeah, just blindly pick their teams.
Well, it seems to be working.
I went against you guys in a couple games last week, and then those games pulled out for me, like Liberty Center and the Ayersville game. So, like Keith said, that Paulding game which we'll talk about, but could have gone either way.
Yeah, and everyone's still in the hunt. So, pretty good year overall for us picking games. So. All right, let's kick it off, and let's get into the Week 4 game recaps. We got a lot of really good games, but we're going to start with the NWO Sports Game of the Week last week, and I know a lot of people wanted to hear our thoughts on this game. So that would be Liberty Center at Archbold. Liberty Center took this one away, 42-14, and really Liberty Center jumped out to a 14-0 lead to start the game. And finally, with under 2 minutes to go in the first half, Archbold's Chase Miller responded with a 94-yard kickoff return, which again, I keep thinking and saying, Archbold's probably got one of the better return groups with Chase Miller and Jack Hurst, because we saw them play against Tinora, and they are deadly and they are quick. So he had a huge play for them to kind of spark Archbold. Archbold actually started off the second half with momentum, but was soon stopped by an interception and an 80-yard return for Liberty Center, thanks to defensive back Cam Colley. And that man just keeps on getting interception after interception, and he's doing a very nice job for the defensive secondary for the Liberty Center Tigers. The rest of the game was history, as Liberty Center would go on to outscore Archbold 28-7 in the second half. Liberty Center went with their traditional ground and pound rushing attack and ran the ball 37 times for 223 rushing yards, good for 6 a carry. Looking at the turnover battle, Liberty Center had 0, Archbold had 4, 3 interceptions and 1 fumble. Again, we talk time and time again, if you lose that turnover battle, especially by that margin, it's really hard to win a football game. And Liberty Center's, this ended up being their 3rd win in a row against Archbold. So looking at a couple top players here from Liberty Center, running back, linebacker Trenton Cruz, 10 carries, 116 rushing yards, good for 11.6 yards a clip, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 receptions, 41 receiving yards, and 8 tackles and 1 tackle for loss on defense. Defensive lineman Landon Bockelman came up big, 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. Again, like I mentioned earlier, Cam Colley, he had 1 interception for 80-yard touchdown. He also had 5 tackles on defense. And then on the defensive side for Liberty Center, Thomas Moeller and Grady Miller each had 1 interception apiece. And then looking at Archbold, wide receiver Chase Miller, 94-yard kickoff return, which we mentioned earlier, for a touchdown, 3 receptions, 25 receiving yards. Running back Lucas Dominic, 16 carries, 52 rushing yards, 6 receptions, which led the team, and 40 receiving yards. Running back Jack Hurst had a rushing touchdown. And that kind of concludes the top players for them. So, guys, this was a really big game, and, half of us were split in Archbold, half for Liberty Center. So let's go ahead and let's talk about this one here.
That was a great game. You had it on your phone up there. We were watching it as we were doing our broadcast at Tinora. But, just kind of shocking and how Liberty Center took off and jumped out to the lead like that. I was kind of a little shocked by that. I figured Archbold would handle it a little bit better.
I think personally, I know I was one who picked Archbold, and I had a couple of people reach out to see why it was is that we picked these games. Really for Archbold, after seeing a comparison of Liberty Center play Tinora and Archbold play Tinora, I just felt like Archbold, they dominated every aspect of the game. Liberty Center, and I know it was the first game against Tinora, played kind of sloppy. Ball was on the ground quite a bit. But Archbold, their O-line, their D-line, they seemed a little bit bigger than Liberty Center. They just absolutely dominated Tinora. So we kind of had that control, Tinora playing both teams. Yeah. And I just really liked, Archbold. Not only could they run the ball, but they also could throw the ball as well. And I thought, being that multi-dimensional offense could really put up some points against Liberty Center's defense. And just wasn't the case. And, it really just wasn't the Blue Streaks' night.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one, Logan. The control group there with Tenora's Tinora being the common denominator. I really wasn't all that impressed with the way Liberty Center started their first half against Tinora. Granted, that was their first half of the season, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But then Archbold comes out and just dominates against Tinora, and I thought there was going to be at least a little bit better of a matchup. But man, Liberty Center has apparently gotten things together and playing clean ball and kicking butt now.
Yeah, you guys pretty much summed up everything I was going to say. You compare the two games, really, Tinora versus Liberty Center and Tinora versus Archbold. I agree with both you guys. Archbold was so much more dominant over Tinora than what Liberty Center was. So for me, that's like you guys said, I just compared the two going into that game, and I thought Archbold had a little bit of advantage, like Logan said, for the run pass balance. But Liberty Center is they're just steamrolling along here. Like, I don't really think they throw the ball more than 12 times a game.
No, and I think this last game they may have only thrown it 3, if that.
Yeah,
so
it's just like Coach Moeller's just lining the boys up and say, "Hey, go ahead and stop us. You know what we're going to do. Now it's your turn to stop us." And thus far, nobody can.
Yeah, and the one thing Liberty Center has going for them is their physicality. I know people talk about that all the time, but when you dominate in the trenches, you dominate in every facet. It's hard for teams to come up from that. And I know there's a bad hit that's kind of going around, and I don't necessarily agree with that. But if besides that point, Liberty Center is a physical team, and it just drains teams when you can go 4 quarters and you can just pound the ball and run it down their throat pretty much every single play. If they're averaging 5-6 yards a carry, I mean, that's basically having their way with the opponent. So.
Yeah, especially last year when you lost Zyder and Orr plus Box and a few others, and Coach Moeller's just like plugging in different people. You can't even really tell a difference from last year to this year.
I mean, honestly, they haven't skipped a beat. I mean, they're reloaded again and they're ready. And honestly, the way that we're seeing right now, they're primed to make a deep playoff run. I mean, just from what we've seen out of a sample of 4 games. Right. So Liberty Center's the real deal.
Archbold, the 4 turnovers are huge, in a game like that. You can't, when you're playing a team like Liberty Center, you can't make mistakes like that. So, if they would play again and Archbold could play cleaner, I think you'd see a lot tighter score than what you see there. But Logan, you brought up the I'm gonna talk about it. You kind of mentioned it was the hit that's been spreading around like wildfire on the internet. Liberty Center, you're a class act team, but there's no need to get into that stuff. You guys got to play clean, and you don't want that stuff chasing you around on the internet, because once it gets on the internet, man, it never goes away. And I mean, it went all the way to Toledo 11 News. That guy, that Tyler Segerman or whatever, it's even on that. So you guys don't want that. So keep your nose clean. There's no need for those late hits like that. Just play clean and win games and pound people like you have been.
Yep, totally agree. Very good point, Tony.
Yeah, I think they're 4th this week in the first poll, so in Division 5. So, yep.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to if you're a Liberty Center Tiger fan. So let's go ahead.
A lot to look forward to as an Archbold fan too.
Yeah, Archbold as well.
They're a solid team.
I mean, just because they lost to a very quality team, there's no reason to keep your head hung low, because they've got a good team. We've seen it firsthand, and they can certainly make a good playoff run as well. So definitely got to keep your head up if you're a Blue Streak.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's move on to the next game here. Looking at Van Wert at Defiance, and man, was this one a close one. Van Wert ended up winning this one 43-42. Van Wert won this game. There's a lot of different things that were going on. Actually, late in the 4th quarter, Van Wert actually botched an extra point, and I believe, didn't you say, Tony, that they threw it to their center or something? That's what was saying.
That's what everybody was saying. They threw it to the center. Was wearing number 30 or 30, a 30 number.
Okay.
And then when the botch snapped, he ran out into the end zone. They threw the ball to him, and the referee, I guess, didn't catch that it was. He was the center, so he would have been an ineligible receiver. Well, that's the story that I was told.
Sure.
So. but then it sounds like it's pretty true. I've heard it from multiple sources. So.
Right. A couple other points from this game. Defiance was without star running back Brogan Castillo due to an injury, and we all know Defiance. Brogan brings a whole nother facet to the game. He's one of the best backs in the area, so Defiance was out without a huge weapon there. Looking at the turnover battle, Van Wert had 0, Defiance had 1, and that was an interception. Both teams were actually very efficient on third down. Van Wert was 8 of 14 for 57%. Defiance was 4 of 6 for 67%. And, looking at this, Van Wert was also 3 of 4 for 75% on fourth down, which that's absolutely huge. Those are real momentum changers when it's do or die, you're fourth down, and you have to get this or you're turning the ball over. So very clutch from Van Wert. Looking at some top players from Van Wert, quarterback and safety Brylan Parker, he continues to go out and produce week after week. He went 21 of 30, 70%, 181 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He ended up running the ball 28 times for 149 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. And on defense, he led it, Van Wert, with 6 tackles. And really, I think, looking at the 28 carries, we really saw the All-Ohio running back in Brylan come out this game. A couple other key players from Van Wert, running back Keldon Bill, 18 carries, 93 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Wide receiver Reese Cruz, 7 receptions, 71 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Wide receiver Connor Campbell, 10 receptions for 68 receiving yards. And then looking at Defiance, a couple guys that really had great games. Quarterback Brez Zipfel, which he's really coming into his own here, in the halfway point of the season. 14 of 20 for 70%, 259 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. He did have 1 interception, 7 carries for 61 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. Good for a total of 5 touchdowns. So, we knew Defiance could run the ball, but man, can they really pass the ball too when they need to. And wide receiver Anthony Wilder, 9 receptions, 129 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns, 3 carries for 41 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. Good for 4 total touchdowns. So what a performance from Anthony Wilder. And then running back Abel Rubio did a nice job at coming in, 13 carries, 84 rushing yards for the Bulldogs. So guys, thoughts on this Defiance and Van Wert game?
Go ahead, Keith. I'll let you start.
Kind of just rebounding off what you guys talked about earlier with the 2-point conversion. Coach Cooper, we had him on a couple times, and we talked to him. He's like, hey, control what you control. That's something you can't control. Probably more concerning for him was probably the 43 points allowed on defense.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
A 2-point conversion that went astray that, it's just like a fire drill. You just got kids going everywhere. So, that play was missed, but Defiance also missed, I believe, 3 of their 2-point attempts as well. So, but like we said, we talked to Coach Cooper. He's probably more concerned about why did we allow 43 points.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at Defiance, without Brogan Castillo, that's a huge miss, right? That's a huge loss for them. And, just looking through the stats, those guys stepped up huge. And I think, talking to some of the guys that were at the game, they said, Rubio, first time he really played both ways a lot. He was running the ball, and then also he's a big linebacker for him. So maybe playing both ways. They said he looked a little tired at the end of the game, so he needs to get himself a little more in shape to play both ways. So, that stuff might work itself out if Brogan doesn't come back soon. But, like you said, Keith, giving up that many points on defense, you can't point to one play and go, oh, well, they looked
right.
You shouldn't have scored 43 points.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other thoughts on this game before we move on?
I watched a little bit of this when I was doing my post game for our game, and Van Wert is just sneaky quick. They're just like little water bugs out there that just.
I've seen some highlights of these guys, guys out on the edge like Reese Crew and Connor Campbell, and man, they can really burn you deep, and they can make you miss out in open space as well. So, I totally agree with you, Keith. All right, let's move on to this next game here. Looking at Ayersville at Paulding, and Ayersville came away big with this one, 20-17 win. Paulding was actually up 17-0 at halftime. And, my initial thoughts were that the game was over and Paulding was going to take the win over Ayersville. We were watching scores as we were broadcasting the Tinora and Fairview game. And I thought for sure, being up 17-0, I thought there's no way Paulding can lose this one. But, there's a huge turning point in the game with under 2 minutes to go. Ayersville was down and had one last chance. They ran a reverse pass on about 4th and 15 on their half of the field. And the ball was underthrown and a defensive pass interference was called. So, I watched this about 5 times and thought, I didn't think there was much contact. I know I obviously wasn't there, and the film view wasn't necessarily the greatest either, but I thought the ball was so underthrown, I didn't think an Ayersville receiver could make a play on it. But with that being said, Paulding still had a 17-0 lead that got away from him in the second half. So do you guys want to – I guess we can comment on that now rather than later, since we're on the topic.
Well, I mean, I looked at that video too. Somebody sent it out. Wanted us to take a look at it, and it's hard to see because of the view we got that kind of cuts off the screen.
Right.
Just as that kind of happens, and it's clear across the field. But again, one play didn't lead to the 17 points that you gave up that you had. So, take care of things. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. I mean, that's basically what was going on.
It's still a tough break if you're Paulding, though, because you literally had them right there, and that would have been a huge win for the program. Yep. I don't even know when the last time Paulding really had a true, win over a quality opponent was, and they were just right on the brink, but they just couldn't get a hold of it.
Kind of solidifies the fact that Paulding still hangs in there as that team you don't want to overlook because they will make you eat it if you don't. So everybody that plays Paulding is going to have to put some time into their game plan going into that game. They can't just, be like, oh, who we play next and skip them because Paulding will make them eat it.
That's what I told Keith, too. I was talking, football is a game of inches. Every little thing adds up. Yep. And you built up a 17-0 lead at half, and then things just kind of got away. So every little thing counts. Every little block, every little detail. The way you run your routes,
penalties,
yes.
An untimely penalty could kill a drive. You know what I mean?
100%. So it's just you got to get to the point where Paulding's starting to get to that point where they're competing with teams that are going out. They got a couple wins this year, but they got to learn how to take it to the next level and how to be winners and start putting up some wins in the right column. So,
and I believe Abe Delano was the one that threw that pass on that reverse, right? They've reversed it back to Abe Delano. He was the one that threw the pass.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, we talked about that, and I'm kind of going right into what you got here, Logan. But we talked about getting that ball in Abe Delano's hands, and they're doing what they can to get their playmakers involved.
Exactly.
So
that was a very good note. And I'll kind of get into some of the key players here from Ayersville. Wide receiver, obviously, Abe Delano, which we're on right now. 7 receptions, 79 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. He had 5 carries for 65 rushing yards, good for 13 a carry, and 1 rushing touchdown. And just like Tony said, we've always kind of said we know Delano's one of the better athletes on that Ayersville team. And for him to make a difference, he's a big frame. He's got to get the ball in his hands for Ayersville's offense to go out and produce. And he's doing a really nice job at it right now. And I looked, and they lined up Delano up in the backfield and ran the ball more with him this game. And he actually had 64% of the team's receptions as well. So they're getting him the ball a lot, and I think it's going to pay dividends for them in the future as well. But with that being said, quarterback Lucas Fishpaw, he was 11 of 27. He had 99 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Linebacker Brady Clark for Ayersville had 5 tackles. He led the team and had 1 tackle for loss. And then looking for Paulding, man, is this kid, he's starting to be a dog on defense. Jack Woods, again, another game with double-digit tackles, 14 tackles. He had 1.5 safeties, 2 forced fumbles, and he's really making a case for being the best linebacker in the GMC and possibly GMC Defensive Player of the Year. I believe this game, he had 4 points for Paulding himself playing defense.
Yeah, so I was going to say they had 2 safeties.
And I believe they started off the game with a safety as well. A couple other kids from Paulding that are really stepping up. Running back Kobe Ford, 22 carries, 63 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. Wide receiver Blake Roanhouse, 4 receptions, 98 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. And, those guys are really going out there, and they're starting to show off a lot of their athleticism. So any other final thoughts on this game?
For me, when we were doing our post game, we run down the scores, and I pretty much put this one in the bank for Paulding. So, time we get our stuff packed up and everything. Of course, we forgot our banners last week, so we had to come back. So it was a good 20-25 minutes after we did our post game. So I turn on the radio to the Bull, trying to catch some scores or whatnot. So then Michael Searing is interviewing Coach Mickey, and I'm like, wait a minute, what the heck's going on here?
For those of you who don't know, Keith had Paulding pick last week,
yes,
too, so he's feeling pretty proud of himself.
So I'm like, what in the world's going on here? But great comeback by Ayersville, and just listen to Coach Mickey. I mean, that's some guy that if you're a player, you just love to play for. He's so energetic, he's so upbeat, he's so just a guy you just like to hang around with. But I had no idea that Ayersville would come back and won until I was listening to the Bulls post game.
All I gotta say, guys, is I know when you read that score off earlier, we joked about it. Back on the Paulding train, woo!
Yeah, right.
And the train derailed there in the second half.
One thing Coach Mickey did say, which I think we've pointed out many a times, is said Paulding is probably the hardest hitting team they've played in a long time.
Yeah, we've been saying that for years, honestly, because I believe Keith, was it 2 years ago that we went over there? And Paulding, they hit, and they don't stop. And those kids play so hard, and it's every single play, and you can just see the tenacity out of these kids. And that's one thing I will say is that they do a very nice job over there is the physicality, and those kids want to go out and they want to play hard. So that's really good props to the Paulding Panthers. All right, let's move on to the next game here, keeping things rolling. We were at this game and we broadcast it. So Tinora at Fairview. Tinora came away 42-14 winners here. Tinora basically returned to the traditional Tinora team of the past, rushing for 376 yards. Tinora jumped out to a 28-8 lead at halftime. Looking at the turnover battle, Fairview had one, which is one interception. Tinora had two, a fumble and an interception. But Tinora was really able to establish somewhat of a passing attack that making nickel and dime throws rather than the deep ball every play. So I thought that was something that was really nice to see out of Tinora. Some key players here: running back, linebacker Grady Gusweiler, 18 carries, 116 rushing yards, good for 6.4 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns. He had 3 receptions and 13 receiving yards. And then on defense, Grady had a huge pick six that he ended up running in from 32 yards out. And we talked during the game, and Fairview's wide receivers had been doing a nice job at sitting in open areas for curls and hitches and running little out routes to the sideline. And Grady made a really great read. He just broke on it, and the rest was history. He had that pick six. And a couple other key players from Tinora. Quarterback Dominic Graziani was 7-9, 40 passing yards. He did have 1 interception. He had 13 carries for 136 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. And then looking at running back Joey Geisinger, 10 carries, 60 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. On the other side from Fairview, quarterback William Zedike was 20 of 40, good for 50%. He had 184 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He did have an interception, and he only had 7 carries for 10 rushing yards. Wide receiver Gavin Mead had 5 receptions for 94 receiving yards, and then wide receiver linebacker Gavin Garza finished with 2 receptions, 21 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. I believe he was the one that had that excellent touchdown reception, keeping both his feet in bounds. He was running a little out route right in the red zone and in the end zone as well. And he also had a 96-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown in the fourth quarter. So, guys, we were all at this one. So who wants to kick off this?
Go ahead, AJ.
I'll start it off. You kind of mentioned it. I really liked that Tinora went with more of the short underneath routes. And we're chipping away at the 5-10 yards. And it worked well for them. It opened up the run game. Obviously, they were able to run all over the place. But being able to get those little quick out routes are going to be a huge game saver come bigger games like this week against Antwerp. If they're able to hit some of those out routes, that could potentially win them the game. Yep. You're not going to be able to run the ball inside every single time against Antwerp because they're going to catch on, they're going to stop it. But those little quick out routes will save your drive in a pinch, as opposed to what we've seen in the past couple weeks where they're always looking for that 20-yard bomb, and it just hasn't been working out for the Rams. So it's nice to see them start going a little underneath here.
Yep, I agree with you. Probably the best complete game the Rams have played offensively and defensively this year. I would say.
I agree.
Yeah, good balance on the offense. Kind of a traditional Rams offense, I guess, from the shotgun, as opposed to, just like AJ said, throw the ball 20, 25 yards downfield and just kind of hope one of our guys grabs it. But nice to see Joey back. Joey Geisinger add a little more threat there to the backfield, and Dominic Graziani. Grady, that touchdown run, the third one that Grady had, was amazing.
That was awesome.
Like how he got in the end zone from basically launching his body from about the 5 or 4 yard line that was probably the best touchdown we've seen all year, really.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
But defensively, like going into the game, we're kind of looking forward to seeing the Fairview offense and Rams defense pretty much shut them down outside the first quarter. They took the 8-7 lead, but after that, Coach Helton and the defense pretty much shut down Zedike. So
yeah, and I just wanted to give a little shout out to the Tinora offensive and defensive line. Alex Homeyer on defensive line for Tinora, he really came alive and was causing some ruckus in the backfield and getting in passing lanes. And then the Rams offensive line, things kind of started out slow, but they really got things together and opened up a lot of big holes for Grady and Dom and Geisinger. So a lot of their credit goes to those guys up front for the Rams.
Yeah, and having the Askins was back, Helmke was back, Geisinger was back, so it was nice to see. Some of those guys were only playing one way. Normally they played two, but having those guys back was nice to see that back out there. To hopefully this week they'll be even better, a little more in shape. maybe. Sure. They get a little bit more wind behind them. But, you got a note here, talking about Dominic Graziani running the ball for 136 yards. And, I agree with you 100%, Logan. We talked about this Friday night. Man, some of the hits that Dominic was taking, he's not a big guy. We talked about this Friday night. He's not a big guy, and he was taking some shots. And then finally, at the very end, he broke one loose and was going down the sideline and tried to get in the end zone and come up hobbling a little bit. And, man, you don't need that.
Right.
When you got somebody like Geisinger and Gusweiler in the backfield, let Dominic scramble and get his yards that way and run him periodically to keep everybody honest. Right. But, man, oh, man.
I said, too, I know some people brought up, they weren't necessarily designed runs for Dom, which I understand, but you're still giving him on read options. He still has the option. That's why it's called an option. Yeah. He still has the option to pull it. I think, in that case, you get Joey back, you have Grady back. Just call straight runs and hand the ball off and live to see another day because, he's your starting quarterback, and you got to save him. You got to look for longevity of the season and even like playoff run if you get to that point as well. So the last thing you want is guys getting hurt. And, like we said, Dom is only 5'11", $170, probably soaking wet. But he's not that 6'2", 190-pound frame that can go out and just bruise play after play after play. Right. But, Dom did do a very nice job when it was called, and he did a nice job at picking up 136 rushing yards.
He's shifty. He's shifty and he's quick. But, just like, man, you see him take some shots. Like,
right. Man. You feel for him.
Yeah, we feel it up there. We feel it upstairs sometimes.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, you got up. That's good.
And then on the flip side, though, Fairview, I think they still have their head to keep up high because that offense, they had things rolling there for a little bit, and they just couldn't get things going really in the second half. And but that offense is going to be very good someday. We looked across the board, and half those kids were freshmen or sophomores, and quarterback William Zedike is a sophomore. And I really like the way he looked in the pocket, and he's going to be one that really develops. And you're going to want to keep your eye on him in years to come.
Yeah, Zedike, he acted like a senior out there at times. He just stood back there and made it reads. I mean, the Rams defense, their defensive backs played amazing. They really did.
Yeah.
So
minus 2 or 3 plays.
Credit to those guys.
But other than that.
But Zedike, you think the week before he threw for about 450 or whatever. And,
right.
But he was just standing back there, had a lot of time, and Rams defensive backs came through.
All right, let's keep things rolling here. Looking at Sand Creek, Michigan at Eden. This game, we just had some of the player stats, so we'll keep things quick here. But Sand Creek ended up losing this game 24. Eden won it with 52 points. And looking at some key players and stars from Eden, quarterback Kyler Sapp, again, goes out and he produces 28 of 40, 70%, 487 passing yards, 6 passing touchdowns. He had 1 rushing touchdown, good for 7 total. Wide receiver Kendall Briggle, 6 receptions, 165 receiving yards. And I'll add the clip to this one. Had a heck of a catch from Kyler Sapp. Kyler Sapp was kind of fading away and threw it up into the end zone for about 40, 50 yards. And it was quite the connection. So I'll throw that clip here in the podcast. Wide receiver Max Radabaugh, 6 receptions, 106 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And then linebacker Cohen Holbert led the team with 11 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. And defensive back Briggs Gallahue finished with 5 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 1 pass breakup. So any quick thoughts on this game here?
I would love to play for Bob Olin on offense.
As a quarterback or wide receiver, especially.
Either one, right? Yeah.
Just probably not running back, though.
Yeah, running back maybe not so much unless you're doing some little bubble passes out of the backfield or something. But other than that,
it was just good to see Eden get back out there and score a bunch of points like they're used to doing. So another quality week from Eden, and I think Eden's gonna shock a lot of people. I think they'll go on and they'll finish with at least 7+ wins this season, and we kind of discussed that in previous podcasts. But Eden's got a really good ball club over there, and they're definitely one not to underestimate. Let's move on to the next game here. Delta at Bryan. Bryan ended up winning this game 49-28. They were actually tied up 14-14 at half. Bryan scored 20 unanswered third quarter points and only gave up 1 first down in the third quarter. So that defense really kind of came alive. And let's talk about Bryan's offense here real quick. They are averaging 44.75 points per game through 4 games, which you think of teams in the area for offenses, you think maybe like Patrick Henry, Antwerp, things like that. But no, Bryan is coming out here, and they're probably honestly have one of the top offenses this season. Yep. Overall, they're doing a very nice job there. Looking at some key players from Bryan, running back Sam Harold, 15 carries, 195 rushing yards, good for 13 a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 receptions for 66 receiving yards. And I said, I think he's probably having one of the best standout seasons by a running back since Edgerton's Hunter Prince or like Patrick Henry's Donnie Johnson, because Sam Harold is coming out, and he's just producing every single week. He's averaging 182 yards a game, and he's on pace for 1,820 rushing yards for the regular season, but still has some big opponents ahead, Archbold, Patrick Henry, which is this week, and Liberty Center too. So we'll see how that goes. Quarterback Jace Kepler was 6 of 12, 125 passing yards, 1 interception, 12 carries for 77 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And wide receiver Drew Hahn for Bryan, 3 receptions, 51 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Looking at a couple kids from Delta, quarterback Justin Rupel, 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 passing touchdown. Running back Landon Littmermoot, 1 rushing touchdown. And wide receiver Richard Flores had a 19-yard touchdown reception. So what are your thoughts on the Delta at Bryan game?
I'm right there with you with Bryan's offense being a powerhouse this season. Unfortunately, it seems like their defense is a little shaky. I know they gave up a bunch of points last week to Fairview, giving up 28 points to Delta here. They got to figure out what's going on the defensive side of things, especially when they get up to games against like Archbold, Liberty Center, Patrick Henry. Those teams are gonna make their defense really work.
And this week they play Patrick Henry, so we'll see. We'll see two heads there. But yeah, when you think of offenses in the area, like Bryan doesn't even come to mind, honestly. No. But then when you see their numbers, especially Sam Harold, like you said, Hunter Prince, I think was probably one of the last few in the area to get to 2,000, and that was probably 3 years ago. So
yeah, I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah, I just I was going to give Coach Redhead a little bit of flack here. You're the defensive guy, Coach Redhead. You got to get some things figured out, man. But no, yeah, Bryan's offense has been doing well, and if they get that defensive side of things figured out, but we're going to see. They're going to come into the meat of their schedule here. Patrick Henry, then you'll have Liberty Center and Archbold here coming up. So they're going to have to get it figured out quick.
All right, let's keep things rolling. Look at the next game. Anthony Wayne at Napoleon. Anthony Wayne won this game 31-14, and kind of shocking, Napoleon was leading 14-7 with 7:02 left in the third quarter, and Anthony Wayne then scored 24 unanswered points to win the game. And going into this game, I don't think anyone really thought that Napoleon was going to have a chance. And they thought Anthony Wayne was just going to come in, arrive, and take care of business and leave. But Napoleon had other plans, and they were really in a dogfight late in this game. Looking at total yardage, Anthony Wayne had 365 yards. Napoleon had 249 yards. Anthony Wayne rushed for 315 yards, while Napoleon went with the passing attack and had 168 yards through the air. Looking at a couple key players from Napoleon, quarterback Owen Espinoza, 20 of 33. He had 168 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. Wide receiver, defensive back Trey Rubenstein, 10 receptions, 70 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown, and 1 interception on defense. And this is another kid. I think he is probably one of the best athletes in the area. Yep. I have a couple highlights that I'm going to attach to this little Anthony Wayne Napoleon segment. Unbelievable. There's an interception that he had. He literally caught it over his shoulder like he was a wide receiver, ran the other way for like another 30 yards or so, and it was just an unbelievable play. But, we talked about early in the season, we got to see him play against Defiance. And he is the guy for Napoleon. He's the guy that goes out there, sparks plays on special teams, on offense, on defense. He's the guy, and he's really doing a nice job this season. So he's one to definitely keep your eyes out for. And then running back Lawson Seibel had a 3-yard touchdown run. So guys, thoughts on the Anthony Wayne at Napoleon game?
It's almost like it's a carbon copy of the opener versus Defiance, where Napoleon led midway to late third quarter. And things just went south again for Coach Schwery. But as you said, Logan, any time Napoleon plays, Trey Rubenstein's probably the top player, if not the top 1 or 2 players on the field. And just got a game plan around him to eliminate him.
And you look, too, he's going out there and performing against teams like Defiance, which they're having a heck of a season, a Liberty Center team, Anthony Wayne. He's just going out there, and it's every single game is a big play or something that he's contributing to put Napoleon and give them a chance to go out and compete.
Yeah, and I think as you've seen with these teams that they've been playing, they're making a halftime adjustment and taking that out. I mean, that's what they did. Defiance kind of did that too. He had a bunch of catches in the first half and not so many in the second half. And then, Anthony Wayne kind of looks like they did the same thing. Maybe, he had 10 receptions. I don't know how many was in the first half, how many was in the second half, but they shut him down kind of in the second half. So maybe they're making some good halftime adjustments and just saying, hey, put an athlete on athlete.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, those are scenarios too where, if you're smart and teams know that you have one really stud, that's where you start bracketing, things like that, and take them out of the equation. But that's where the other guys in Napoleon have to step up and really make plays to go out and try to win the ball game. So let's go ahead. We'll move on to the next game here. Antwerp at Hicksville. Antwerp came away with this one big, 39-6. Looking at the turnover battle, Antwerp had 1, which was a fumble. Hicksville none. Total yards of offense, Antwerp had 454 yards to Hicksville's 121. A couple key players here from Antwerp. Quarterback Carson Altimus, 7 of 15, 47%, 255 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, 3 carries for 20 yards. And that was close to what we said, which we kind of predicted. And I believe AJ said too, around 300 yards, not 500 passing yards, blindfolded and left-handed. So we kind of figured it would be somewhere around there. So we were pretty close. Running back Reed Leachty, again, he's got to be, I think, one of the best running backs in the area as well. He goes out there and he's always going to rush for 100 to 200 yards a game, sometimes more, but he finished with 15 carries, 127 rushing yards, 8.5 yards a carry, 1 rushing touchdown. He did have 3 receptions for 25 receiving yards. Wide receiver Cam Fuller finished with 5 receptions for 155 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. And linebacker Dane Scholl led defense for Antwerp with 10 tackles, and he had 2 tackles for loss. Looking at a couple of key players from Hicksville, wide receiver Brant Langham had 107 receiving yards, and running back George Green finished with 65 rushing yards, and he had 1 29-yard rushing touchdown late in the fourth quarter. So thoughts on the Antwerp-Hicksville game?
Well, one thing I want to bring up is Altimus is just out. I mean, he's just coming out and performing week after week after week. And, guys, you look, he was 7 of 15. He was only 47%. But 5 of those completions were for touchdowns.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? It's like,
that's a good point.
So, and I just heard somebody say something today that when they play Altimus, they say he's super smart. He can pick you apart.
It's like a coach on the field, basically.
Yeah. Yep. So he can pick you apart. So, I mean, it's nice to have a quarterback like that, and he just sits back there, and I guarantee we talked about this. He probably could have had 500 yards, but I'm sure he was done earlier in the third. Probably come out. So, but yeah, just another good game from Antwerp.
I think more impressive for me is, we have 5 touchdowns. You had 7 completions for 255 yards.
Right.
I was about to say the same thing.
That's astonishing. It really is. But Antwerp and Tinora this week. We'll see. Good game last year. And a good game the year before.
Could be the game of the GMC too.
We'll
so
see.
A lot going on for the Green Meadows Conference this week, Tinora and Antwerp. So,
and I believe Reed Leachty is close to becoming Antwerp's all-time leading rusher. I think he.
Can really? That wouldn't surprise me.
Possibly can break it this week.
Okay,
I believe, so.
That'd be pretty cool to see. So,
we'll see a lot of records.
Closer
all being broken this year.
Ash Meyer breaking records and Brogan getting up there in record books, and so a lot of cool things. Let's keep things rolling here. Swanton at Wauseon. Wauseon came away with this one 48-12, and Wauseon really just dominated this game. 469 yards of total offense to Swanton's 136. Turnover battle, Wauseon had none, which we said, Wauseon has to really go out and prove themselves, especially on offense, and Swanton had 1 fumble. Looking at some key players from Wauseon, quarterback Trey Parsons was 16 of 18, very efficient, 89%, 239 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. He did have 1 carry for 22 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown, good for 5 total touchdowns on the game. Wide receiver Tyson Rodriguez had 8 receptions, 81 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Wide receiver Wyatt Smith, 3 catches, 81 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. And linebacker Austin Kovar had 10 tackles to lead the team. So, thoughts on the Wauseon-Swanton game?
I just said Wauseon just needs to keep rolling. They've got things figured out here for a little bit. Again, they're going to come into the meat of the schedule as well. So,
I think that's something too. Wauseon's getting a lot of questions this year about are they the real deal, this and that. So, they really need to start playing the best ball of the season because they've got a gauntlet of a schedule coming up with teams like Liberty Center, Patrick Henry, Archbold, and even Bryan too. So really going to have to see what Wauseon's really made of going forward. But, nice performance against Swanton. And they basically went out there and did what they were kind of expected to do. So, on the flip side, Swanton's just got to keep trucking through and trying to get through this little grind of a drought for their program. And it's hard to do, but those kids got to keep their heads up and keep on moving forward. So, all right, let's move on to the next game. Wayne Trace at Edgerton. Wayne Trace ended up winning this one big, 42-6, and they won at Edgerton, which Edgerton's always a tough place to win at. And this was really a statement game going into Edgerton and winning by 36 points. Wayne Trace put up 402 yards of total offense while Edgerton had 185. Turnover battle, Wayne Trace won with 0. Edgerton had 2 fumbles. Looking at key players from Wayne Trace, quarterback Kyle Stoller was 12 of 22, 189 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He had 10 carries for 88 rushing yards. Running back Tucker Antone had 12 carries, 71 rushing yards. He had 1 reception for 10 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. And the last player for Wayne Trace was wide receiver Cole Moore, had 4 receptions, 70 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. A couple players from Edgerton, quarterback Maddox Baker was 17 of 29. 147 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. Wide receiver Kellen Sanchez had 3 receptions, 57 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And linebacker Joel Walkup, 15.5 tackles, led the team and 1 tackle for loss. And I said a little note with him, he's similar to Paulding's Jack Woods. Both kids are having phenomenal years at linebacker, and they continue to perform week in and week out on defense. And, both those kids are probably some of the best linebackers and defensive players in the GMC. So thoughts on the Wayne Trace at Edgerton game?
Go ahead, AJ.
I was going to say, this really was kind of a statement game for Wayne Trace. And it's unfortunate. It looks like Edgerton's having a bit of a down year right now. They're struggling. But Wayne Trace looks like they're coming out firing on all cylinders and could be a threat to the GMC. We kind of talked about them a little bit. What's also cool is looks like they were fairly split on offense. Kyler Stoller was 12, had 12 completions. Tucker Antone had 12 carries. They're getting that dual threat going on their offense.
Yeah, kind of a bounce back win for Wayne Trace after that tough loss to Crestview. So Coach Holden and them had the boys ready to play at Edgerton.
Yeah, it's a tough place to go in and play. Nice win.
All right, let's move on to the next game. Patrick Henry at Evergreen. Patrick Henry ended up shutting Evergreen out 38-0. Patrick Henry's defense also played lights out this game, which I think that continues to improve for the Patriots. They only gave up 135 yards of total offense, and they won the turnover battle 1-0. And Patrick Henry's rushing attack stole the show this game, led by running back Houston Miranda, which he's another kid in the area that continues to improve each week. And it's really been a nice compliment to Patrick Henry's offense this year. Houston Miranda finished with 15 carries, 193 rushing yards, good for 12.9 yards a carry with 3 rushing touchdowns. He had touchdown runs of 32, 70, and 2. So, man, can he really break off some big runs. Wide receiver Lincoln Krieger, 6 receptions, 71 receiving yards. Wide receiver Thomas Smith, 2 receptions, 40 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. Quarterback Nash Meyer was 12 of 16, again efficient, 75%, 152 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown. Wide receiver defensive back Landon Johnson had 3 receptions, 35 receiving yards, and he had 1 interception on defense, returned for a touchdown. A couple of key players from Evergreen, running back Max Mossing finished with 12 carries for 80 rushing yards. Wide receiver Colton Robertson finished with 4 receptions, which led the team for 24 receiving yards. And linebacker J.J. Johnson led the team with 5 tackles. So thoughts on this NWAL matchup here?
For me, each week, the first thing I look at when I get the Saturday paper is Houston Miranda. Honestly, I want to see what Patrick Henry did on the ground as compared to through the air. Last year, kind of relied on Nash quite a bit. This year, as we said, we interviewed Coach I, wanted to install the tight end and have a little more balanced run pass. And again, if you ask Coach I and you could see these numbers every single week, he would be the happiest coach in Northwest Ohio.
You look at Miranda's got 12.9 yards a carry. Shout out to the offensive line. You guys are doing your job. There's no way he's running for 12.9 yards a carry by himself. So, keep up the good work. You're letting Houston run back there, and so just keep going.
Yeah, and like we said, and Coach I said, they want to run a lot more 11 personnel with a tight end and a running back. And I believe Grant Smith, I think, is the guy at tight end. He's been doing a really nice job blocking, and he's a big frame, and he's tearing things up on the defensive side of the ball as well. So Patrick Henry's got things rolling, and AP poll came out, and I think they're number 2 in Division 7. So
number 2.
They're getting a lot of recognition right now, and rightfully so. So keep up the good work. And on the flip side, Evergreen, they're showing improvement this year, and Coach Box doing some really good things there and taking over from Coach Karchner last year. And, Evergreen's kind of on the cusp, but, they get another big win this year. Really, that could be a program changer. So we'll see how the Vikings do the rest of the season. Next game here, we got a couple more, and we're all done with the game recaps. Ottawa-Glandorf at Elida. Ottawa-Glandorf lost this one 8-30. Looking at some different stats from the game, it was a tough outing again for Ottawa-Glandorf. OG had 152 yards of total offense to Elida's 279. You look at third down efficiency, OG just kind of struggled. They were 2 of 9 for 22% compared to Elida's 8 of 13 for 62%. And they actually tied up the turnover battle. OG had 2 with 2 interceptions, and Elida had 2 with 2 fumbles. Looking at some key players from Ottawa-Glandorf, wide receiver Grant Schroeder, 4 receptions, 57 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. And linebacker Dane Dooling had 11 tackles. He led the team. He also had a sack and a tackle for loss as well. So thoughts on the Ottawa-Glandorf-Elida game?
I don't have much to say other than, OG's just having a tough run here.
Yeah, I think Elida is probably one of the more surprised teams in the area this year, really.
Yeah, the Lighters came out, and I believe they were, what were they?
4-6 last year,
Yeah,
I believe.
but I think they were, this game, they were what, 3-0? Or
I think so.
I believe they had at least 3 wins coming into this game. So, again, it's just another tough loss for Ottawa Glandorf. And I think really kind of going into the season, we thought things would kind of turn around. But we said, too, programs just kind of go through these spurts, and they just got to keep trying to at least go out, compete, and really try to pull off and string together a couple wins here to put together the rest of their season. So just another tough game for Ottawa Glandorf. But again, just keep going out there and grinding. That's all you can do.
Yep.
Looking at the last game here of our game recaps, Danbury at Holgate, and Holgate won this one big, 60-12. Again, Holgate's high-powered offense prevailed with 500 yards of total offense compared to Danbury's 148. And unbelievable, Holgate only had 2 third downs the entire game and converted on both. Just to put that into perspective, 2 third downs the entire game. That means that they were never basically behind the sticks, and they were either getting a first down on every first down they had or every second down. So that's just very impressive, and I thought that was crazy to see that stat. Holgate actually had 4 different players with a rushing touchdown, including McCord, Dillon, and Zach Boker, and Mendoza. And looking at turnover battle, Holgate tied Danbury with 2 apiece. And some key players from Holgate: quarterback, defensive back Xavier McCord is a highlight show over there, 8 of 12 for 67%, 158 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He had 2 carries for 51 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and he also had 6 tackles on defense. And then wide receiver, linebacker Dylan Boker, 2 receptions, 71 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. He had 2 carries for 51 rushing yards, and he had 1 rushing touchdown. Good for 3 total touchdowns on offense, and then he had 6 tackles and 3 tackles for loss on defense. So, guys, thoughts on the Holgate Tigers?
Go ahead, AJ.
I would just love to see Holgate continue to perform the way they perform in this 8-man league and representing Northwest Ohio very, very well.
Yeah, just Xavier McCord, like you said, just keeps coming in week after week. He can just
shoelace.
Yes.
Like Denard Robinson out there making plays.
Oh, don't compare him to Denard. Come on.
Hey, I'm a Michigan guy.
Don't do that to him.
I'm a Michigan guy. Denard was pretty exciting to watch, and so is Xavier as well. So
And we've been talking about the 8-man game for a long time, and I think our friends over at Black Swamp, I think Lynn and Coach Struck, I think they're actually covering this game Friday night.
Oh, are they really?
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so they'll have that on their radio cast.
Yeah, I think the Crusaders that are coming in, they're 3-0 as well, so it should be a big time matchup. And get out there and watch some 8-man football because Holgate's doing some really good things this year. So
I got to coach 8-man last week, guys. Last Thursday, our 7th graders played against Holgate, and we played the 8-man, and they were wanting us to respray our whole field because I didn't know this. The field's actually smaller.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. They're like, "Hey, are you going to respray the field?" And I'm like, "Respray the field? What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I didn't know." So I learned that right off the bat. But I tell you what, it's a little different. It's a little different 8-man versus 11-man, but it was fun.
All right. Well, that concludes our game recaps. We're going to go ahead and take a break to hear from our sponsors. 3Chord is a family-owned and operated business who offers the highest quality embroidery, screen printing, sign and promotional items to customers of Northwest Ohio at competitive prices. Locations in Archbold, Napoleon, and Bowling Green. Check them out at 3chord.com. That's THREECORD.com. BSN Sports is your go-to business for purchasing uniforms, equipment, spiritwear, and anything else your athletic program needs, giving you more time to impact lives on the field. With over 1,200 sales professionals who live, work, and serve in your community, we are always just a short drive or phone call away. Be sure to give your local sales rep and Jim Garris a call for any of your athletic supply needs. We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and with it being the halfway point of the season, we're rolling out the Coach's Corner segment of the podcast. And this week, we have head coach of the Tinora Rams and Eric Becker joining us. So thanks for coming on the show today, Coach.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Let's kick things off. Like I said, we're coming up on the halfway point of the 2023 football season. With that being said, how do you feel your team is sitting right now?
Finally healthy. It's been a process. We kind of held Joey and Graham back a little bit from the concussion. I know they're seniors. They wanted to be out there. They wanted to go. Just playing it safe with those guys, knowing more than likely a second concussion coming back too early would put them out for the remainder of the season. They're wearing the Guardian caps at practice now to help negate some of the head-on-head collision. Other other than that, getting Aiden back, finally having our starting front five back since the first half of Liberty.
Definitely.
I think that showed dividends Friday night. It took them a hot minute to get gelling again Friday night, but I think as the game wore on, you started to see those five know each other and have each other's back and started rolling, and then the run game really took off. And, on the defensive side, those first 3 weeks, I mean, it's a juggernaut.
Yeah.
Each week, giving that, I think we were averaging giving up 325 yards a game, I think is what we figured out. In just trying to get back to us, knowing going into league play, trying to have some kind of foreshadowing of, hey, these games are going to help us out in the long run. And I think finally Friday night that showed we were the more physical team on the field, and I think they felt it. So I think we're finally sitting in a really good spot going into the second half of the season.
Yeah, and you led into my next point, and I was just about to say, obviously it's no secret that Tinora has played one of the toughest, if not the toughest, out-of-conference schedules in Northwest Ohio. But really, what are your thoughts, and we kind of discussed this here, what are your thoughts on playing tough non-conference schedule and with the way things are now with 16 teams making the playoffs? I'm sure there's pros and cons, like we kind of talked about both. What are your kind of thoughts of playing such a tough schedule, with the ability to make the playoffs with 16 teams per region?
Even with the 16 getting in, your non-conference still has to hold some weight. You still need the computer points. You still want to be one of the top 8 teams. You got to have those first 3 games like that if you want to be a top 4 seed and have the chance to host the first 2 weeks of the playoffs. You just can't go out there and start scheduling teams that is going to be an automatic win when they might go 2-8 or 1-9. It's not going to do anything for you down the road. If you really want to go in, position yourself the best you can, you still got to pack the front end a little bit.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And actually, I just read something today for North Central, and it's Drew Pastor's Fantastic 50. I like to follow him for a lot of stats and stuff. And they actually said, I believe if North Central wins out and they go 9-1, I don't think they can even host a playoff game. So that just kind of shows, where strength of schedule comes in. And, so very good point, like you said, too.
I think they play 2, maybe 3 games that are out of state, which is also not helping.
Right. But like you said, that was just kind of a point that, it does. Jeez. It can definitely help you out.
I know we talked about Antwerp's, playing Hilltop and Montpelier and Eden, I think it was, right? And it's,
right.
They were talking about that earlier on, but geez, and then we compared it to your guys' schedule. Liberty Otsego and Archbold. It's like, holy smokes, 2 totally different realms there.
All right. Well, I'm going to kind of open it up to these guys and see if they have any questions for you, Coach.
I'll start off by saying I think I can speak for the entire Tinora community when I say we're very proud of what you've accomplished here with all the ups and downs and everything coming into week 5 now with a 2-2 record, still doing very well, showing that you're definitely a team to compete in the GMC. It's an awesome thing, and you definitely mentioned Fairview. That game this past Friday was really nice to see you guys start to gel on offense again. The offense has definitely been kind of up and down, a little all over the place this year. What has been the most challenging thing to overcome as far as getting the new offense kind of implemented?
Finding the best positions for the skilled players. We have a ton of them. We have an abundance of skilled players. We have more skilled players than we do linemen, which was the hard point. We had to take Graham from being a tight end, H-back style guy and put him down on the line because we needed another athletic body down there. Just getting the consistency. I think that's the most challenging that it's been so far, is finding the consistency, hitting the open guys, taking the right reads, knowing when to pull. Dom is doing the best he can right now. It's a lot to get installed. I think the last we looked, there's probably 300-400 plays that we could go to. And I'm sure Tony can attest to it. We gave them a ton for the junior high to go into, and just finding the best plays for the guys. What works best for Grady might not work the best for Joey. Both really good athletes. But they have their own tweaks. What works for Rostai? What routes work best for Caden? What works best for Carter? What works best for Jake when we get Jake out on the field? Bishop, which, you know, people want to say, oh, he's just a kicker. That kid's an athlete. You guys can all attest to it. You see him running around. Getting Owen out there. Owen's huge. We got to be able to find a way to consistently get Owen involved to take the top end off of defense. But you got to be able to run the ball, get people to start coming up to where they start solo covering Owen. So just find the consistency, and we're grinding through it. I said it. I had another podcast yesterday, and between me, Charlie, and Casey, Coach Good, Elmer, we grind. I mean, people don't understand how much time coaches actually put in. You know, Sunday the guys were there for almost 4 hours just working on defensive stuff, and Casey didn't finish it up till Monday. So there's a lot of time that goes in that people don't see. They see you out there during the week at practice, Friday night on a game. You know, Friday nights are easy. I don't want to make it sound like something it's not.
I know what you mean.
It's anybody who coach knows when you're on that sideline, you're in your happy place. Nothing else matters but that next 2 hours.
Yep. I agree with that 100%, Eric. It's, you know, being a coach myself, and, you know, with softball, I always tell those girls the best place for me is to be sitting back on the bench with my legs on the bucket, man. I want you guys to understand what you're doing, so that way, you know, when it comes to Friday night, everything gets easier. All you guys do is kind of direct the orchestra. Everybody knows how to do their play and all that kind of stuff, and all you're doing is kind of leading the charge.
Exactly.
Tony, you got any questions?
Not really. You know, with everything that's been going on, Eric, you guys have done a great job. And you know, what is you mentioned that you have a lot of athletes, and I noticed there was a little bit we caught on to it right away Friday night that you had Radzik run the ball a couple times, and you know, what are your thoughts about getting more people involved as far as carries and stuff like that?
It was kind of something that had to be done out of necessity. Carter normally plays the slot receiver for us. He got a little bit banged up against Archbold. Bruised ribs, thought they might have been broken, went in, x-rays were negative, and we kind of limited him going throughout the week. And it's kind of funny when you say limit him, then we play him on defense. Right. And he's a missile on the back end of the defense. He's one of the guys that is just an absolute leader. You look at him, you never expect this kid to just come up and just lay the hammer on somebody. And he's been like that since he's little. He's a really special kid for us. But we knew we were going to have to take him off the offensive side of the ball. And now that people are finally getting back healthy, we can start rotating those skilled guys a little bit more, bringing Jake in. Dylan Shively is a sophomore. We moved him from quarterback to a receiver because we know we're going to need another tall, lanky receiver next year. So getting him into it this year is really helping out. He finally got to get his first snaps with the varsity Friday night. Jake got involved. Seago, again, Friday night. I don't think he had any catches Friday night, but getting him out there, getting him running the routes, getting confidence in Dom to throw those guys the ball.
Keith?
Yeah, Coach. Yeah, again, congratulations. I mean, you've been like the best here with all the time you put into the program and everything you've had going on. Is there something like from a coaching standpoint that's like better or worse than what you thought before you accepted the job? You're kind of like, wow, this is really taking a lot more time than what I thought it would.
A lot of the behind the scenes, I'm not going to say anything bad about that. The school, the administration, Jake Essig coming in as the AD, a slam dunk hire. Jake is phenomenal. Absolutely. He's going to be a rock star for us. The people in the community, once they get to know him, Jake is absolutely killing it behind the scenes.
He's doing a great job.
Mr. Knopfsinger, the principal, nothing but great things, open arms, whatever we need help with, he's right there. Then Mrs. Wells leading the charge. Phenomenal superintendent. Anything that they can do for us and help us out, they have done.
That's awesome.
So the behind the scenes, the ordering of equipment, that stuff is just that could go away. If we could coach for 12 months a year out on the field, do stuff like that, that'd be phenomenal. The behind the scenes, that stuff's it takes some getting used to.
Another follow-up question I have for you, Coach, is playing Fairview last week with a similar offense that Antwerp will have, did that kind of help you for your defensive plan coming into this week versus Antwerp?
There were some wrinkles we wanted to try and throw in last week because we knew they were going to go 5 wide, go 2 by 2, spread us out, try some different formations. So there were some things that we were like, hey, we can use this week to help us prepare. Not that you wanted to look past. Coach Rake is doing a phenomenal job
we've
over there.
pointed it out a million times here. Like their sophomore class is probably going to be not as talented as Antwerp's senior class, but it won't be too far behind.
No, they're going to be special here before long. He does a phenomenal job over there. They're taking their lumps. They're learning a new system just like our kids are. He's going to have tremendous success over there again, probably not in the near to future. I kind of lost my train of thought.
What are your thoughts coming up into this week playing Antwerp?
Follow the game plan. Stick to the game plan. Don't do your own thing. We kind of saw that last year. We lost on a 50-50 ball towards the end of the game when a kid didn't follow his assignment. Not to take anything away from them last year. They got to go out there and they got to be the most physical team on the field again. Nothing is more evident than that. You've got to be the most physical team, whether you run a spread or not. You want to run a full house, you want to run the wing tee, you want to run a spread. You still have to have the physicality in the game. And that's what we've been preaching to the kids. And now that the weather's cooling down, it's really going to show.
We'll wrap things up here with just a few other questions. Where would you like to see the Rams grow and improve in this second half of the season?
Consistency. Being able to just consistently do what we want to do. Run when we want to run. Let Dom let the ball loose when he wants to. I think he showed a little bit Friday night. We were in a short 4th down, and it was right around midfield. We were just on the other side. And, you got a really good punter in Jake. And we just felt at that point in time, hey, let's just go for it. We can get this. It's going to be a little momentum boost. I think at that point in time, it was still 0-0. And we picked that one up. And I think we went eventually down and scored and had a really good drive. If we can put together drives like we did Friday night and actually methodically move down the field,
right?
That when we say consistency, that's what we want. We want to be able to take, we're a spread. We can throw the ball around. But we want to be able to march down the field methodically. Everybody loves to score in 1 or 2 plays, but then you turn around and put your defense back on the field for 7-8 plays and wear the kids out over there. So being smart with the play calls. Coach Kelly's doing a phenomenal job on the offensive side. Casey's doing a phenomenal job on the defensive side. Now it's, hey, we're in league play. We know these guys like the back of our hand. There's probably not a whole lot of wrinkles people are going to throw or we're going to throw at people that surprises anybody. So consistency is the biggest key going forward.
I got one last thing for you. If you get a win versus Antwerp, am I going to get a chance to interview you after the game?
That all depends how your pick goes later.
He actually said that a little bit ago, Eric, so you nailed it.
Yeah, you did. I said, I'm going to ask Eric this, and we'll see what he has to say. So
and you got the answer you expected.
I still had to crack up I think it was the Otsego game, and I was going on the field, and it's like you had your eyes on me like a hawk and screaming across the field no, and I got a pretty good kick out of it, because these guys were wondering, like...
Yeah, it was funny. We get a walkie-talkie. It's how we communicate back and forth, just a little walkie-talkie. And I'm like, hey, Eric's going down to 30. Hey, he's going over to the bench, because he was like, yeah, he said no.
And there was a lot of things going on that Friday that I hadn't let anybody in on, especially on the side of Amber. And I walked after we were in the middle of the field and everybody was grouped up, and I said what I had to say to the kids. I just walked back over the bench, and I think it was Jake and Eric Wimpkin walked up behind me, and I go, that's what it's about right there. Just look out there. Yep. Look at the kids. Look at the fans. That right there. makes it worth it.
I think we talked about afterwards, actually, because when Logan came up and said he didn't want to talk, I was like, well, just look at him down there. He's just soaking everything in right now. It was actually one of our favorite moments of the season so far.
There were a lot of emotions going on right there on that sideline, just taking in the first win. Beating somebody that, most people, I'm pointing at the big guy, who led the charge of, and I get it. He can't pick us every week. It's hard for you guys to pick us every week. We get that. We use a little bit of fuel every once in a while.
I always say, just because if we don't pick you, that doesn't mean we don't want to see you win. Right. Believe me, 100 times out of 100, I want to see the Rams go out there and win. But it's all in fun nature.
That was the one time I didn't pick you guys, and everybody's like, "Why you didn't pick them?" I'm like, "Man, I'm seriously, just being honest. So with the injuries that you guys had, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to devastate their offensive defensive line. You're really going to be struggling." But I tell you what, the way those kids stepped up then at that Otsego game. Dude, that was an awesome display. Right?
That was a fun one. It was special in many ways. Like I said, there was a ton of emotions going through us, and we kind of threw it at the kids this week. And we said, go back to last year. We lost to a Liberty team nobody thought we had a chance to beat. I mean, the game went how it did. We went down to Lima and played LCC and pulled out a heck of a win down there that nobody thought we were going to be able to do. So we went down there and, week 3, I don't remember who it was we lost. Or no, we beat Wasion and then we beat LCC. So we were going into week 4 like, oh, hey, we're 2-1 and we're sitting pretty good here. And then you get Antwerp week. And here lately, even going back to Bryson Hayden's senior year, it was 13-7 with the 50-50 ball for us to lose. Coach Hale's doing a tremendous job over there. All him and Coach, or now the AD, Ultimus. He's done a phenomenal job over there in his career. There's a lot of mutual respect both ways going into this week, so it's going to be fun.
Yeah, like you said, Coach, even last year, you guys were a throw away from tying or winning that game last year. It was a 4th down. I think it fell incomplete in the end zone. So
yeah, it's going to be fun Friday night.
It'll be great. Looking forward to it.
The boys ready. They're dialed in. Last week they were a little bit more focused. This week, I know the kids are all over it. One of the other one's house right now, and they're going over the scouting report, watching film.
That's awesome.
And this might be the first week that we've actually heard them say, "Oh, hey, we're going here." And it's locked in, and they've been waiting. We put it on the scouting report. They've had to feel this one for 365 days. 22 years of not losing, and they were the ones. A lot of them were starters last year, and they took that burden on their back, and they want to do something special Friday night. They want to let the world know, hey, we're here.
All right. Well, we'll wrap things up here. Just want to thank you, Coach Becker, for taking time out of your busy week to join us tonight, and good luck this Friday and the rest of the season. So we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
All right.
Thanks, Coach.
We're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. For any of your auto body or collision needs, be sure to check out Bat and Stevens Body Shop, voted the #1 body shop in Northwest Ohio by Crescent News readers. Give them a call today at 419-497-3111 to schedule your free estimate. Check out Tinora Rams Live. Live events broadcast on YouTube and post-game results, articles, schedules, and more can all be found on TinoraRams.com. Feel free to look up their Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages as well. Fairchild Family Chiropractic aims to help families to get better together in the least invasive way possible. Dr. Fairchild focuses on the neck using the Blair technique and Palmer package, adjusting to correct spinal misalignments. Located in Defiance, Ohio, call Dr. Fairchild today at 419-576-5070 to schedule an appointment. Back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we're going into Player of the Week from Week 4, and we had a lot of good performances again, and we got it kind of narrowed down, and we're going to go through the nominee list, and then the guys, we'll talk about some guys that had really good performances, and then I'll release the Player of the Week from Week 4 for NWO Sports. So let's go ahead, let's rattle them off. Liberty Center running back, linebacker Trenton Cruz. Van Wert quarterback safety Brylan Parker. Defiance quarterback Brez Zipfel. Defiance wide receiver Anthony Wilder. Ayersville wide receiver Abe Delano. Paulding linebacker Jack Woods. Tinora running back linebacker Grady Gusweiler. Eden quarterback Kyler Sapp. Eden wide receiver Kendall Briggle. Bryan running back Sam Harrell. Antwerp quarterback Carson Ultimus. Antwerp wide receiver Cam Fuller. Wasion quarterback Trey Parsons. Wayne Trace quarterback Kyle Stoller. Patrick Henry, running back, Houston Miranda. Holgate, quarterback, defensive back, Xavier McCord. Holgate, wide receiver, linebacker, Dylan Boker. And one guy, I know we didn't get Montpelier stats, but this was sent in. Montpelier, defensive line, Eli Fackler. He had 6 total sacks last game, which is a single game record, single season record so far. He's at 8 and career leader with 12 so far. So he had quite the performance for Montpelier. So who wants to kick it off? Someone a player that they were kind of looking at for player of the week.
Go ahead, AJ. You can start.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at Brylan Parker. I know we gave him one earlier in the season already, but he's continuing to come out and do very well, and it potentially has won them that game, and maybe even won them the conference, depending on where they fall with WAPOC and things like that. Coming out and going 21 for 30 with 181 passing yards. That's awesome. On top of the fact that he had 3 touchdowns. He was responsible for 3 touchdowns and 6 tackles on defense. So he's kind of all over the ball, doing very well, rushing and passing. So definitely keeping things going there.
Yep. I again had Houston Miranda, 15 carries, 193 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just he seems to be doing better and better every week. The PH offensive line open up the holes. Miranda's busting through. And as we said, Coach I probably happy he's got a 50-50 run past balance, if not more, actually.
And for me, I kind of like the duo from Defiance, Brez Ziffel and Anthony Wilder. I mean, Brez was 14 to 20, and 9 of those were to Anthony Wilder. So, Brez threw for 4 touchdowns, and Anthony caught 3 of them. So, to me, that's a nice duo that picked up the slack a little bit for Brogan Castile being missing.
Yep. And all those athletes had excellent performances. But the guy that we're going to go with, he really made a difference on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, and even special teams as well. And that guy is Tinora running back linebacker Grady Gusweiler. He ended up finishing the game with 18 carries, 116 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. He had 3 receptions for 13 receiving yards. He had that huge pick 6 on defense for the Rams as well. And that 1 touchdown run we kind of discussed was absolutely phenomenal. Yes. Great blocking by the offensive line. He made a couple guys miss, and he kind of dove out. And the way he scored that touchdown it had to be 30, 40 yards out.
I think it was 35.
Was phenomenal.
In the last 5, he flew in the air somehow. I don't know. I still don't know how he got there.
He had quite the performance. Keith brought up his special teams efforts, almost blocking punts, and that really changes the outlook of things on the special team side. But our NWO Sports Player of the Week is going to go to, again, Tinora running back linebacker Grady Gusweiler. So congratulations to him. Our NWO Sports Player of the Week will receive NWO Sports gear courtesy of BSN Sports. So we appreciate them for all that they do for area athletics. All right, let's move into the next part of the podcast. And we're looking at the power rankings here for week 5. So again, I'll roll through the rankings here, and these guys will see how the rankings are and kind of roast me again.
You mean our state playoff rankings?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk on these rankings out there. So, and that's what it's all meant to be. It's meant to be good. No, it's not meant to be like the official rankings of the area. But, this is what I kind of look at all the teams. You take into consideration quality wins, quality of losses, things like that, a whole bunch of other things as well, but just kind of to rank all the teams in the area regardless of division. So
yeah, I don't like people getting upset. I mean, I understand that they're digging at each other a little bit. I mean, I do that myself, but geez,
turning into the college football playoffs.
It is
discussion.
It's kind of funny.
All right.
Anyways,
we'll go ahead and we'll start with number 25. So coming in at 25 is Swanton, 24 Hilltop, 23 Hicksville, 22 Ottawa Glandorf, 21 Fairview, 20 Edgerton. Thoughts on this group here?
It's kind of shaking itself out, like you said. I'm okay with that.
Yep, agree.
I'm right there with you.
All right. Coming in at 19, North Central, 18 Montpelier, 17 Delta, 16 Napoleon, 15 Wayne Trace.
You're going to get scolded, man. North Central won, and they can drop it in the rankings, dude.
I know, and we're gonna get into that later in the hot takes. Believe me, I got some things that we're gonna bring up. But North Central is really kind of scolding us for the rankings, but strength of schedule that's huge in this too.
Montpelier also. 3-1 and sitting there at 18 and dropped a couple spots. So you're going to get it. You're going to hear it, Logan.
Yep. We'll see. Like I said, it'll shake all it out. I mean, there's a lot to go, and we'll see how things go.
When week 6 comes around, when they play Eden, then we'll see.
We'll start seeing it.
Right.
All right. Looking at number 14, Paulding, number 13, Evergreen, number 12, Eden, number 11, Tinora, and we'll save the top 10 here. So thoughts on this group here?
Yeah. Again, it's going to shake itself out right here this week. So we'll take care of a couple of those.
Yep.
All right, breaking the top 10. Coming in at number 10 is Ayersville. Number 9, Columbus Grove. Number 8, Wauseon. Number 7, Bryan. Number 6, Archbold.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, looks good. Columbus Grove with a huge win last week, so
I think it's too going to shake itself out, obviously, when Wauseon plays Bryan. But Bryan plays Patrick Henry this week, and obviously Patrick Henry came in at number 4, which I'm going to release here in just a second. But again, a lot of these top 10 teams keep playing each other, and they just kind of work things out as we go. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the top 10. I mean, Liberty Center, Patrick Henry, Archbold, Bryan, Wauseon, they're all going to play each other here coming up soon.
Yep. So let's go ahead. Let's break the top 5. Coming in at number 5 is Antwerp. 4 is Patrick Henry. 3 is Defiance. 2 is Van Wert. And number 1 is Liberty Center.
Yeah, I mean, the Liberty Center's win over Archbold, I think they still deserve to be in the number 1 spot.
yeah, Liberty Center's
Defiance is lost to Van Wert, I guess. So you got to rank them below the Van Wert, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's but PH. I tell you what, I agree with that. I mean, I think PH and Defiance, we put them head to head. Defiance probably pulls that victory out. I don't know. We'll see. But
Patrick Henry's are really making a case for themselves here of late. Their defense is playing really well. Their offense is firing on all cylinders. As Keith said, they have the option to run or pass the ball. So really becoming a dynamic team there. So
I mean, I think Antwerp's got a chance to show themselves a little bit this week against Tinora. Tinora's got the same thing to show themselves against Antwerp. So, you could see some big time movement, in my opinion, in the top 10 coming up this week.
Yeah, we haven't really seen a whole lot of tough competition for Antwerp yet, so it's hard to really say where they're going to fall. But this week will be kind of their first real test to see where they match up.
All right. Well, that concludes our Week 5 Power Rankings. We're going to go ahead and take another quick break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty is a top real estate agent in Northwest Ohio. Crystal's compassion and enthusiasm allow her to find that special property or house just for you. Located in Bryan, Ohio, give her a call today at 419-799-1243. Jimenez Basketball Academy strives to create an atmosphere to cultivate basketball fundamentals in Northwest Ohio youth athletes, offering one-on-one sessions, group sessions, speed and agility training, and much more. Located in Pettisville, Ohio, call Coach Jesse today at 419-551-8105. The Drop Zone Pizzeria is the #1 voted pizza restaurant in the region. Check them out for pizza, wings, subs, and more. Located in Ayersville and Stryker, or ask them about their traveling food trailer. Optimal Performance Fitness is your go-to gym in Northwest Ohio, providing group fitness classes, personal training, and sports performance sessions for area athletes. Located in Napoleon, Ohio, give them a call today at 419-438-7265.
We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we're back to our favorite segment of the entire podcast, and that is the Hot Takes presented by BSN Sports. Well, we kind of discussed some of these topics a little bit previously, so these are going to be good ones. You're not going to want to miss. So let's get things rolling here. The first hot take that was sent in to us was Wauseon needs to win 2 of the 3 big NWAL games to earn respect. And they really looked at Liberty Center, Archbold, Patrick Henry. I agree 100% because we've seen they went out against Bellevue and they really kind of laid up an egg. They really didn't put up any offense, anything at all. We know Wauseon has some really good players, skilled players, especially in Tyson Rodriguez. Wyatt Smith had a really good game last week, and obviously Trey Parsons, their quarterback, continues to do really well each week. But I have to agree with this one, and even I would throw in. Not only that, but even against Bryan. Bryan is another team I think is a top team in the NWL as well. So, guys, what are your thoughts on this hot take here?
Against those 3, if they could win one of those, would be a big thing. I mean, they're going to play Evergreen, PH, and then Delta, Archbold, Bryan, Liberty Center. You definitely throw in Bryan in there because they're playing well this year, but they've got to win. I would say 2 out of those 4.
And the crazy thing is, if you win one of those games, even that's a loss against whatever. That's 1, 2. We throw Bryan in the mix. 3. If you take 1 out of the 4, you're already at 6-4 for the season, which we've seen Wauseon. That's where they've kind of finished the last couple of years. But in order for Wauseon to kind of get back to that dominance that they had, 5 to 10 year-ish ago, they really got to take. I agree. They got to take at least 2 of those games.
I'm right there with you. I think even if they would knock off one of these teams, they would gain a little respect. Now, what do you want for respect? Are you talking respect them as a contender for the conference, or are you talking about respect as, not somebody to look past kind of thing? to me, they would earn a little bit of respect if they can knock off any of these teams, because they're going to be that upset team. So it really kind of depends on what you're looking for there.
I think also the wins that they get depend too, because are we talking, Archbold and Bryan, or are we talking the big dog in Liberty Center? Because if you take out Liberty Center, which they're going for their third or fourth NWL title, and no one's really came close to them in the last few years. If they take down Liberty Center, I think that earns a lot of respect from Wauseon, because we've seen what Liberty Center has done last year and the year before, and we see what they're doing this year. If Wauseon takes out Liberty Center, that's a game changer right there. So, Keith, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as a program, say the last 15 years, Wauseon's definitely towards the upper tier. Like Coach Cooper, when he was at Wauseon, like they had probably one of the better teams in the area year after year after year. Specifically this year, you always think of Wauseon, high-scoring offense, spread, stop him. Coach Morris got them playing well, 3-1 this year. But, if you knock off one of those three, I think, or you're competitive, honestly, in those three, even though you may not win one of them, if you play them close, I think you'll earn some respect.
At the end of the day, I think it's a must. Wauseon has to take at least, and I'm going to throw Bryan in there because Bryan is having a good season. Yeah. 2 of the 4 Wauseon must win this year, because we've kind of seen them just right in the middle of the pack year after year after year, and for them to kind of return to that dominance and being that upper tier of the NWL, they got to win 2 of them.
Yeah, their last 3 is Archibald, Bryan, and Liberty Center. I mean, and Patrick Henry's leapfrogging like a couple in front of that. So it's a very rough last 5.
All right, let's move on to the next hot take here. Someone sent in, Holgate could compete in the GMC now for football. Who wants to kick this one off?
Go ahead, Keith.
You're having a heck of a season the last couple of years. Xavier McCord is playing great. Exciting 8-man football, probably one of the better athletes in the area. To just go back to playing GMC football, I don't know. I mean, that would require to field an 11-man team, something Holgate had problems with in the past, which is why you're playing 8-man, is you couldn't field a team that could actually compete in the GMC. So we would like to see it. Obviously, they're not going to be in the GMC anymore, because that's one of the reasons why they're not in the GMC. Because
it's a numbers issue.
They couldn't compete in football. So
how many kids does Holgate have on their team this year?
I think 20.
Yeah, so 20. So you're right. You basically can't play 11-man football with 20 kids. Not and compete. At the high school level. You can do that in the junior high level, but you can't do that in high school level. It's just not going to work. But, and it never was that whether Holgate had athletes. Holgate always had a few athletes, but they just don't have enough kids to play that.
That's the thing with the sport of football. It's not a 1 or 2-man game. And Holgate has some phenomenal athletes.
Absolutely.
But you have to have all 11 guys being studs and playing pretty well to go out there and compete. And you just have to have the numbers and the consistency to go out and do that. Keith, were you going to say something?
Yeah, and Coach Wagner's done a great job over there the last couple of years of getting the kids to come out and play, because they actually canceled their season, I think, 2 years ago, because they didn't have enough kids.
Oh, and they won the Northern Conference title last year.
In the following year, right, they did. So this is not a knock on Holgate whatsoever. Coach Colton Wagner's done a great job. It's the question, we're just responding to this particular question. So when we talk about Xavier McCord, and last year we talked about Holgate 8-man football quite a bit, just to promote it.
I think you look at 2 different things. Okay, so if Holgate goes back, they're really dominating, obviously, 8-man football. We've seen this year and last year too. They're doing really well. So do you go from winning a bunch of games and having all the success to going in the GMC and starting to lose you know what I mean? Like that was kind of the issue. They were running into numbers. They had some losing seasons and stuff like that. So as a program, do you want success or do you want to be challenged, and do you want to deal with those losses? I don't know. I think that's kind of the turning point, or where we have to decide.
Yeah, I think that the hindrances, like if you're an 8-man coach, there's just not enough currently. In the future, like 3 or 4 years, you may have more teams in this area to play, because now you're making long drives in the bus and whatnot.
8-man's growing too.
It is, absolutely. So, but hats off to Coach Wagner, doing a great job over there. And a player like Xavier McCord, the elementary kids, seeing him from their eyes is like our heroes growing up, like baseball and football. Right. So they're going to get more kids, hopefully, come out to play football.
Yeah, and the thing about 8-man, like I said, I just coached it last week, so it's a little different. But in 8-man, you basically line up, 8 athletes, and you play against 8 athletes, and you can pretty much put anybody in there, as your lineman, because basically the way we did it is we had a center and 2 guards, and then everybody else, took the tight end, the 2 tackles out, and you're done. And basically, so you're playing athletes on athletes, right. And you can field, even schools like Holgate can field, some pretty good athletes for 6 kids. Right. They have 6 good athletes, but when you start going into 11-man, well, now you got 6 good athletes, but now you need a 5-man front to go in front of them.
Exactly.
And that's where you start having the issues. So those 6 athletes don't get much, gaining much yardage because you're getting pounded the whole time.
That's a great point.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, going back to this question, Holgate could compete in the GMC now. Key point is now. I don't think so, just because it's a numbers issue. That's the whole reason they went to Northern 8. But overall, it's an interesting question. Holgate's doing really good things, and honestly, the way they're going, they should repeat as conference title winners again. Yep. And I think, like Keith said, it does a lot better for them to go out and, they're winning. They're breeding a winning culture there. They're not losing games. Yep. And like you said, Keith, those little kids see that. They grow up. Well, I want to play football for Holgate because they're winning and it looks like fun. So definitely doing good things there. And I only expect Holgate's program to grow each year. So, all right, that was a really good one. So let's move on to the next one. We got a couple more here. This next one. We'll see how some people respond to this. So this one that sent in was North Central plays a cupcake schedule. So let me roll through some things here. So let's look. So they played Woodmore, a 1-3 team. They've won 30-6. Parkway 2-2, a MAC school. They lost 27-48. Fremont, Indiana was 1-3. They won 30-3. Hilltop 0-4. They won 51-0. Looking at the remaining schedule, they got Cardinal Stritch, Van Loo, Schroeder, which they're from Cincinnati, Ohio, Cincinnati College Prep, Van Loo again, Reading, Michigan. And all the teams on the schedule combined at this point in time have a 10-27 record to date. And Van Loo, kind of a point on them, they played games last year with 10 guys because they ran out of players so due to injury. So who wants to kick this one off?
Yes, they do. It's simple as that. Yes, they play a cupcake schedule. If North Central is going to want some respect, they're going to have to find some teams around here to play them first off. Which I don't know. I don't know how you got to get them on a schedule for a couple of years. You got to start reaching out to schools.
It's hard too because they don't have a conference. They're basically the Notre Dame of Northwest Ohio. Yeah. So they really have to travel to Indiana, to Michigan, to Cincinnati, even. So
picking up Parkway is a good. Tinora played those guys for a few years, and that's a good pickup. Again, heck of a drive, right? All the way from North Central from Pioneer. Yeah. So. But for me, you got, in order to get respect, which is what they're always yelling about. To get respect, you got to play people like we mentioned with Coach Becker. If you want to be the best, you got to play the best.
Exactly.
You got and you're going to take your licks. You're going to get beat up when you play those teams, and you just got hopefully you come out healthy, which Tinora did not against W Center, and that's what he was talking about. But I'll try not to take up all the time talking about it, but no, I 100% agree. They play a cupcake schedule.
And at the end of the day, like I referred to earlier with Coach Becker, I think Drew Pastor released, like I said, if they go 9-1, I don't think they can even get home field advantage. But at the end of the day, you can play all these teams in the regular season, but you're not playing for a conference title. And so the main thing is playoffs. So you got to play these tough teams to prep you, because once you get to the playoffs, if there's 16 teams in the area and the region that are going to go out there and they're going to be quality ball clubs, and you're going to have to go out there and compete. And, North Central, they've got good players. I think they're very well coached, but at the same time, they got to play some teams. You look at their schedule, and I think there's maybe 2 teams that could finish with a winning season. That's Cincinnati College Prep, which I don't know much about them, obviously, but they're 3-1. They're a prep school, obviously, so they must be pretty good. So they probably recruit people. And Parkway's a MAC school, and usually Parkway's kind of the bottom of the MAC, and they get beat up every year. So I agree 110% that if North Central really wants some respect as a program, they've taken their baby steps. So now they had their first varsity season last year, which they had a winning season, excellent playoff berth in their first season, amazing. Yep. So now as a program, you got to take that next step, play some quality opponents, be battle tested, go to the playoffs and get that playoff win, and kind of go from there. So,
unfortunately for North Central, I think they're kind of a team really without a conference, honestly. Like the BBC, it's not really a football conference. It's similar to 8-man, which I think actually they just started up a few years ago. They kind of bounced around starting off.
They did JV.
Yes. Starting off 8-man or going back to 11-man. And it's just making those long bus trips just because you're not really in a conference. It's more of like you guys said, perfect points. It's more of a hindrance really than anything.
Right. The most sense for me is North Central. They try to get into the TAC, the Toledo Area Athletic Conference, with teams like Eden, Montpelier, it's Hilltop. I believe Hilltop's in that as well.
Yep.
Ottawa Hills. And there's some other teams, but I think that would make the most sense. Get into a conference, play a conference schedule, go out, compete for a conference title, play some local teams.
Right.
And that will kind of help with things too, because it's hard, I'm sure, for a lot of those fans to make a 3-4 hour trip to some of these games on a Friday night. And, basically you go down to Cincinnati from North Central, that's Pioneer. So
that's 4 hours.
That's like 4 hours there
for sure.
And 4 hours back too.
Correct.
So you're spending 8 hours on the road as a fan to go watch them play. So, I think it'd do them really good justice if they could get into that TAC conference. That makes the most sense to me. And then you can get a better following, things like that, play some tougher teams in this area, and really take that next step in your football program.
Yep.
All right. Let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next one. And I believe this is the last one we had for hot takes, and that is Antwerp has the best receiving core in the area when healthy. I'll start this one off. I think I'm going to have to debate that, because this kind of goes back to that Nash Meyer, Landon Johnson, Carson Altimus, and Landon Brewer conversation. So again, it's Antwerp and Patrick Henry, two similar, very talented teams that have really good offenses. But you look at Antwerp. Let's break it down. Landon Brewer has, this is to date, 18 receptions, 357 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns. Cam Fuller, 17 receptions, 348 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns. Caden Winslow, 12 receptions, 190 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. And Tavin Shaw is also another good wide receiver, and he's getting healthy again. Patrick Henry on the flip side, Landon Johnson, 19 receptions, 392 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. He also has 12 carries for 55 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. You have Lincoln Krieger, 19 receptions, 262 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. Thomas Smith, 12 receptions, 207 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And they also have guys like Brock Berriman and Trent Johnson. So you look at those stat lines, they're pretty similar. They all have their number 1 in Brewer and Johnson, but then they have a really good number 2 this year, and Cam Fuller and Lincoln Krieger, which are honestly competing for, they would be a number 1 on any other team, honestly. And then you have some really other good wide receivers. But I just think it's interesting, just kind of a food for thought, that both teams have very strong number 2s. And they're really complimenting the stars of Landon Johnson, Landon Brewer well. We talk about when teams have that 1-star wide receiver, obviously teams take it away. They're not just going to let a guy go out and have 300 receiving yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. But these guys like Lincoln Krieger and Cam Fuller are really stepping up, and they're putting up big numbers this year. But that's a tough one. I'll save my decision for the end. So what are you guys' thoughts on this hot take here?
Well, one thing with Patrick Henry is they're trying to get more of a balanced attack this year, which is something that Antwerp really hasn't been doing a lot of. They're definitely a passing offense, and the stats show it. Now Patrick Henry is too, but they've been, Coach I has been trying to implement a little bit more of the run, the tight end style offense, so they don't necessarily rely 100% on their passing game. They do, and
Antwerp can run it though too with Reed Leachty. So right.
But in the key moments when Antwerp needs that touchdown or needs that first down, they're going to go to that pass. Unless they're their opponent's really showing, they're back off the line. But Patrick Henry has been, we've been seeing them run the ball in those situations a little bit this year.
Tony, what are you thinking over there? You're awfully quiet.
I just kind of went back and looked at the schedules, right? So we talked about, we just kind of cracked North Central playing a cupcake schedule. And you look at Antwerp, they started off the season, they played Montpelier, they played Eden, played Hilltop, played Hicksville. All good ball clubs, but, Hilltop, obviously, I think they won 1 game last year, right? Hicksville's obviously struggling this year. Montpelier's actually coming around. Eden, obviously, is playing pretty well, but, it's, so then you look at PH, who they've played. Just kind of comparing stats to stats, right? They've played Hicksville, Wayne Trace, Columbus Grove, and Evergreen. So you kind of really are comparing kind of apples to apples in my eyes anyways. And, if you go by stats, okay, I give it to Antwerp. They have the best receiving crew if you're going stats, but I would take that either quarterback, and I would take all 4 of those receivers on either team.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of the same thing that we discussed a couple weeks ago with the quarterbacks.
It's very similar.
Patrick Henry, Antwerp, and we had the Brewer Ultimus Nashmeyer talk. Yeah, it's rough. You can't go wrong with either one of these receiving crews. 2 weeks ago, I went with Nashmeyer slightly above Ultimus just because I thought Patrick Henry plays a better schedule overall, and
I agree.
And it's more competitive. Probably the same way for me here. I'll go 51 PH, 49 Antwerp, just because of the schedule that they play all 10 games. I'm speaking of, like these numbers here. You look at Antwerp. Most of these kids probably didn't play in the second half.
Right.
Same way with Patrick Henry, but they probably played longer. I'm assuming Coach I probably played the kids a little bit longer because all their games really weren't over at the half. But Antwerp, you would assume the kids probably played a series in the third quarter, then they were pretty much done. So, but I give the edge 51 to 49 PH.
I just think it's funny too because these teams are so much alike.
Yeah.
You look at their offenses, all the athletes that they have all over the place. 2 very similar teams and their structure and the way that they do things, and both 2 very successful teams as well. But at the end of the day, I think, again, it goes back to that. PH has been battle tested a little bit. They played a really good Columbus Grove team, and they laid the hammer down on them. We're going to see really what Antwerp's made of and how good that passing attack is this week against Tinora, because really Antwerp has yet to be challenged, and Tenora's got a pretty quality defense. So I think that will kind of really show where we're at, where Antwerp is at with things. We know the guys over at PH can go out and they can compete. So that's the big thing, is how good is that Antwerp passing attack against a quality defense. All right. We're going to go ahead. That was our hot take, so we'll wrap that up there. Again, continue to send those in. I'll post things out on social media, but that's all fan-driven. We enjoy that each week, and there's a lot of good conversation had. So a lot of good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to this. But I don't know if you want to hear it or not. It's going to come from all of us. So
always a good time.
Yeah, for sure. So we thank BSN Sports for sponsoring that segment. Let's go ahead. Let's move into the next one. Matthews breakout players for Week 5. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, he's going with Columbus Grove running back Trenton Barraza. Reasoning is Delphus Jefferson really struggled on defense so far this year with stopping the pass and run, so I expect Barraza to have a big week for Grove. On defense, he's going with Reese Crew from Van Wert. Reasoning is Wapakoneta has struggled to score against quality teams so far this year, so I expect Crew to be an issue for the Wapak offense. And like I keep saying, as weeks go on, Matthew's got a crystal ball because he picked Grady Gusweiler as one last week.
Yeah.
And he had that huge pick 6, and he played really well on defense. And he was actually the NWO Sports Player of the Week this week. So, again, if Matthew's calling your name out, I would be watching all eyes on whoever those players are because they're going to have big games for sure.
We mentioned that right away last week. As soon as he had that pick 6, you're like, hey, Matthew said it.
That's right.
He's pretty much nailed every one of these through the first 4 weeks.
Exactly. So be sure to watch your eyes out for those players there. So we're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back with Game 5 game predictions and closing thoughts.
Northwest Ohio Basketball hosts premier basketball tournaments for boys in grades 3 to 8 in the area. Upcoming tournaments are right around the corner. Give them a call today at 419-283-5296 or check out their website at nwoball.com. The Thunderdome is your local indoor softball and baseball facility offering private lessons, turf infield, batting cages, and pitching machine rentals, even offering a golf simulator. Located in Archbold, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-906-3643. Nicely Rentals and Storage is your go-to venue for graduation parties, birthdays, weddings, and more. Also offering vehicle storage, table and chair rentals, and U-Haul equipment. Located in Ayersville, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-439-6177. Back on the NWO Sports Podcast, we're going into Week 5 game predictions next. So we got a slate of a lot of good games here. We'll kind of roll through and we'll see what people's thoughts are. So let's go ahead. Let's kick it off. Archbold 3-1 at Delta 2-2. Again, Archbold, they're coming off a tough loss to Liberty Center. Delta could make things interesting. You know, they went out and they competed with Bryan up until halftime. We're actually tied 14-14. But I think Archbold gets back on track. I think Coach Dominic gets the boys and the Blue Streaks right.
I think Archibald comes out and they come out without mercy, and they take it to Arc Delta. So I'm going the Blue Streaks.
You hit all the bulletin points, Logan. Taking the Streaks.
Blue Streaks.
Blue Streaks for me.
Looking at Bryce had Archibald and Matthew had Archibald. So Archibald from all of us. Next game, Brian 3-1 at Patrick Henry 4-0. This game will be interesting. You know, it was kind of one of the games that we talked about for possibly NWO Sports Game of the Week. But at the end of the day, Patrick Henry is rolling, and I mean absolutely rolling right now. Offense, defense. I believe Coach Andy Schaefer from Columbus Grove, we were watching on Black Swamp's podcast. He came in and he had to say about, if Patrick Henry could get their special teams on track, they'll be unstoppable. You know, the number 2 AP poll team in Division 7. So I think Patrick Henry comes out and they take care of business. Especially we know Brian's defense has been struggling this year. So I'm going the Patriots.
Yeah, this is actually a good game. I mean, it wouldn't be surprised if we gave our halftime score was like 40-34. But taking the Pats.
PH here. It could be a potentially very high-scoring game on both sides.
This was an interesting one, guys. I was ready to type Brian in there, and the only reason I typed PH in there is because they're playing at home. I just think this could be, if Brian wins, this wouldn't surprise me. I just think Brian's been playing well enough on offense. Just don't know if they can stop the defense, hold up defensively enough.
Bryce and Matthew both had Patrick Henry. So Patrick Henry for all of us. Look at the next game. Wauseon 3-1 at Evergreen 2-2. Again, this is one. Wauseon's starting to find their groove. They got to come out and they got to win this one big. Again, we talked about the hot take. If they want respected, they got to come out and take care of business every single week, especially against like an Evergreen team that is much improved. But I think at the end of the day, Wauseon's going to be a little too much, so I'm going Wauseon.
Agree with you, Logan. Taking Wauseon, it's one of those games you can't overlook. Don't look ahead to the next week when you play Patrick Henry. Concentrate on Evergreen. Taking the Indians.
I'm going with the Indians as well.
I picked the Vikings, guys. I think Evergreen's going to sneak one out here. They're going to challenge Wauseon. I looked at the Wauseon schedule. They haven't been tested yet. I think Evergreen's going to put it to them.
Bryce and Matthew both had Wauseon, so Tony was the only one that had Evergreen, and I mean, Tony's leading the way, so Tony might know something we don't know.
Yeah, Tony just picks teams. That's all he does.
Looking at the next game, Liberty Center 4-0 at Swanton 0-4. We saw what Liberty Center did against Archibald last week. I think they take care of business again this week, so I'm going Liberty Center.
Yep, Tigers.
Yeah, I think the only question to be asked here is how many drives in the second half are the starters actually going to play? I think Liberty Center is going to come out and just absolutely dominate this game, so Liberty Center.
Yep, Tigers.
Bryce and Matthew both had Liberty Center as well. Next game, Tinora 2-2 at Antwerp 4-0. This game should be probably I don't know if I want to say, it probably is, honestly, the determining game in the Green Meadows Conference. Antwerp, this is their first big test of the year. We talked about earlier, their passing offense, they really haven't been tested, period, against a really quality defense. So this is their first step, and we're going to be there Friday night. So at the end of the day, I'm going to have to go to Tinora. And quick little fact, when we were off camera, when we interviewed Coach Becker, I made a bet with him and said if Tinora beats Antwerp, I get to shave my head and my beard off. So pretty big bet. I don't know. We may do it at the actual game. We'll get video of it. But I said, if Tenora's got to be Antwerp, and I'll do that, and he'll let me interview him. So that was the deal. I had to pick Tinora, and I had to shave my head and my beard if Tinora wins, and I get to interview Coach Becker after the game. So.
Tell you what,
and I'm a man of my word. I'll do it. But
that's a pretty big task just to interview Coach Becker. I mean, is it really going to be worth?
I know. And I'm debating if I should tell my wife yet or not. So
just let her see it when you show up Friday night.
Maybe best. That's what I said.
Well, I don't know. You might want to let her know. She hasn't seen you without a beard, without hair. You walk in, you might be looking down the end of a gun barrel or something. Right. Like, who is this guy?
I don't know. But I'm going to Tinora. I do think Antwerp has a really good shot, obviously, of winning this game. But there's other reasons. So I'm going to Tinora. Keith, the pressure's on you, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm taking the Archers. It's at Antwerp. A big crowd over there. Antwerp has better offensive players than Tinora. Defensively, if the Rams play like they did last week against Fairview, obviously the offenses are two different. Antwerp's high-powered. Fairview's will be high-powered. Similar schemes. But if the Rams defense and special teams comes through, they can pull off this upset. But right now, I got her stamped Archers.
I'm going to go with Tinora here. You guys have kind of hit all the bullet points, so I'm sticking with Tinora.
Are you shaving your head too?
My wife would kill me.
No, guys. Honestly, I'm picking Tinora because I think Tinora can win this ball game. I think Tenora's got all their players back. They're healthy. They were literally a pass away from pulling off the victory last year, in my opinion, or maybe 2 passes away. I think Tinora, if they can get after Ultimus, make him move around. I mean, I know Antwerp's got a lot of athletes, but they had a lot of athletes last year.
Same offense. Basically.
Yeah, same offense. Nobody's changed. It's just a matter, they've all grown up one more year. So, and Tenora's defense did too. You got Gus Weiler, Radzik, and Rostai back there. Gus White or Geisinger, all those guys are still back there. So, I think I'm picking Tinora because I truly think Tinora can pull off this upset.
And Bryce had Tinora and or Matthew had Antwerp. So we're pretty split across the board there. And, this game has been close the last few years, even back when Bryce was playing and they played at Antwerp. It came down to the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
so this is going to be a really good ball game.
It was like a 14-6 ball game or something, right?
Yeah, I think Anders scored a late touchdown to kind of put it away.
Going to be a good one. Looking at the next game, Edgerton 1-3 at Ayersville 3-1. Ayersville had a little bit of a scare last week against Paulding, but they really persevered and held on. Edgerton struggling this year, and this game being at Ayersville, I think Ayersville gets back on track and they handle their business. So I'm going the Pilots.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm taking the Pilots.
I'm going with the Pilots as well.
Yep, Ayersville.
Bryce and Matthew both had Ayersville as well, so Ayersville from all of us. Next game, Fairview 0-4 at Paulding 2-2. And, honestly, before seeing what the scores were and how the games played out last week, I would have gone 100% with Fairview. I really like the way that Coach Rakes is doing things over there. William Zedike is playing phenomenal. Meade is also a really good wide receiver. But they were kind of shut down by the Tinora defense, and we know Paulding's got a good defense there too with Jack Woods, linebacker, and like I said, I know I said that when I thought Paulding was winning, but they ended up losing that game against Ayersville. But I truly am. I think I'm back on that Paulding bandwagon because, they almost took that one away from Ayersville, and I think they're starting to find a groove. So I'm going the Panthers.
Yeah, taking the Panthers.
Paulding.
I'm taking Fairview. I'm going with the Apaches.
Bryce had Paulding and Matthew had Paulding. So Tony is the only one that went Fairview. Next game, Hicksville 1-3 at Wayne Trace 2-2. We saw a really good performance out of Wayne Trace last week against Edgerton. I think they pick up again. Coach Holden's got the boys in the Raiders playing really good ball right now. Hicksville's been kind of down this year, so this game being at Wayne Trace, which we all know is a tough place to win at if you're in the Green Meadows Conference. So I'm going the Raiders.
Raiders.
Wayne Trace.
Wayne Trace for me.
Wayne Trace from Bryce and Matthew as well. Next game, Eden 3-1 at Whiteford, Michigan 3-0. And for those you don't know, I believe Whiteford's team, they won their respective state championship in football in their division in Michigan. And they're coming off a win against Ottawa Hills as well. I think this is just going to be tough for Eden to get over. So I'm going Whiteford.
Yeah, I saw all that too, Logan. I'm like, but Bombers scoring a lot of points. I'm picking the upset in this one.
I think I'm going to go with the Bombers here as well.
I went with Whiteford just because they're playing at home.
Bryce had Eden and Matthew had Whiteford, so we're pretty split on that game. Next game.
Maybe that's what I need to start doing is just picking the home team.
The home team.
It's kind of like we always joke about women. I picked it because I like their uniforms. It's like, they're at home. I'll pick them.
Let's look at the next game. Summerfield, Michigan 3-0 at Hilltop 0-4. We don't know much about Summerfield, Michigan, but I know they're 3-0, so I'm going Summerfield on this one.
Summerfield.
Yeah, I'm going to take Summerfield.
Yeah, Hilltop's struggling to find a victory, so yeah, Summerfield for me.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Summerfield. Next game, Montpelier 3-1 at Sand Creek, Michigan 1-2. Again, another out-of-state team, but I think I really like what Montpelier's doing right now. They're defense is playing really well. Their offense is playing really well. Eli Fackler, defensive lineman for Montpelier, setting records on the defensive line. So that's going to cause a quarterback a lot of trouble for him on the defensive side for the Locomotives. So I'm going Montpelier.
Yeah, Coach Robbins can be 4-1. Could be 4-1 after this week. Taking Montpelier.
Going with the Locos.
Locos for me.
Bryce and Matthew both had Montpelier as well, so Montpelier from all of us. Next game, North Central 3-1 at Cardinal Stritch 1-3. I'm going to go North Central on this one, but again, this is a game they have to come out and they have to show that they mean business. We kind of talked about their easier schedule earlier. If they really want to make some noise, they got to win this game here, so I'm going North Central.
Taking the Eagles, North Central.
Yeah, they got to come away with this win here to kind of gain some of that respect that we're talking about. So North Central.
North Central for me.
Bryce and Matthew both had North Central, so North Central from all of us. Next game, Shawnee 0-4 at Defiance 3-1. And you look at this, this has got to be almost a moment for Defiance to kind of take a breath. I know you shouldn't take any opponent lightly, but, you look at the first 4 games of the year playing Wapakoneta and Van Wert and, Napoleon, which is always a tough rivalry game. Now they get to take a step back after they faced all these tough teams. So I think Defiance wins this. They win it big.
Kind of a joking matter, but does Defiance play every game at home like Michigan?
No kidding.
I think I saw. Let me have to look.
Just kidding.
Let's look at their schedule.
I think they may have 6 home games this year.
But I'm taking the Bulldogs. This is a good game for Coach Cooper, just to concentrate on fundamentals, get the Dogs' confidence back, and get Defiance back on track.
They're just looking at the schedule. Their home games are they're loaded at the beginning of the season. So.
Yeah, 4 out of the first 5 are at home, and then 4 out of the last 5 are away.
That's rough.
Kenton, Elida, Salina, and OG are all the way.
I'm going to go with the Bulldogs here. I think it's kind of like similar to Archbold. They're going to be coming out firing, and they're going to have no mercy this week.
I think the Bulldogs are going to be just fine.
Bryce and Matthew had Defiance as well. Next game, St. Mary's 0-4, which that's kind of shocking. I think Keith, you brought that up too. St. Mary's is usually a powerhouse in the WBL. At Ottawa Glandorf 0-4. I know St. Mary's is down, but they've still gone out and competed against teams, so I'm going St. Mary's in this one.
Yeah, it left us in blank for a long time. Actually, I finally settled on St. Mary's.
I kind of just picked St. Mary's. Don't really know what to say about that one.
I picked OG. Why did I pick OG, guys?
Because they're different.
Home game.
Because they're at home.
Oh, they're home. Yeah, that's true. They're home, and you always got to pick against everyone else.
0-4 versus 0-4. I'll give the home team the advantage in that one. So,
all right. Bryce and Matthew had St. Mary's. So again, Tony is the only one going against the grain.
I'm either going to come out of here smelling like a rose or in the dog pile, one or the other.
We'll have to wait and see. Next game, Wapakoneta 2-2 at Van Wert 3-1. This is going to be our NWO Sports Game of the Week. It's a big game in the area, especially for the WBL. So we're really going to see how things shake out. And for Defiance's sake, they need Wapakoneta to beat Van Wert for a chance at the WBL title. So I really like the way Brylan Parker, Crew, all those guys are playing for Van Wert. They're playing lights out right now. They're coming off a big win against a really, really good Defiance team. So I'm going Van Wert.
Yeah, this is like the equivalent to our Tinora Antwerp game down south, really. It's rough game here. Taking Van Wert.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Van Wert.
Van Wert for me.
Bryce and Matthew both had Van Wert as well. A couple more 11-man games here. Napoleon 0-4 at Springfield 2-2. And actually, I don't know why my pick was in this. I am going the Wildcats. And I think I really liked what I saw out of them last week against Anthony Wayne. They didn't even have business being in that game. No. But if Napoleon's going to have somewhat of a season, they have to. It is a must-win this week at Springfield. Yep. They have to take this because they're kind of getting in their schedule here with some teams. Now that they're done with that crossover game in the NLL with Anthony Wayne, they have to start winning these games, and it starts now. So I'm going Napoleon, and I think they take this one away with a win.
I picked Springfield, but Logan brought up valid points. Napoleon's played toe-to-toe with 2 of the better teams in here, Defiance and Anthony Wayne, through 3 quarters. But taking Springfield.
I'm right there with you on that one, Keith. It's good points by Logan, but I think I'm going to go with Springfield here.
I'm right there with you, Logan. I think they've been playing tough. It's Napoleon's week. They're gonna sneak one out of here.
And Bryce had Springfield and Matthew had Napoleon, so we were split pretty evenly on that game. Last 11-man game on the slate, Columbus Grove 2-2 at Delphus Jefferson 0-4. Again, Columbus Grove coming off a tough loss to Patrick Henry, but we know Patrick Henry is one of the better teams in the area. I think Coach Schaefer gets the boys right, and they come out and they take care of business against an 0-4 Delphus Jefferson. So I'm going Grove.
Yep, Columbus Grove.
Columbus Grove.
Columbus Grove for me.
Bryce and Matthew both had Columbus Grove as well. A couple of 8-man games on the slate. Stryker 1-2 at Toledo Christian 1-2. I think I'm going to go Toledo Christian on this game. I think Stryker's been struggling the last couple of games and really haven't been able to get things, I don't know, not like what we're used to seeing. We saw last year Stryker had a phenomenal season. They did really well, but there's a different vibe to it this year. So I'm going Toledo Christian on this one.
I stayed home. I took Stryker.
Yeah, I think maybe Stryker can get things on track with this game. So I'm going to go with Stryker.
I'm going to go with Stryker.
Bryce had Stryker and Matthew had Toledo Christian. Last game here, Tri-State Crusaders from Indiana 3-0 at Holgate 3-0. And honestly, this could have probably been one of the NWO Sports Game of the Week because both teams are very talented. This was always a big battle last year as well. So I think, this game's at home at Holgate. I like the way Xavier McCord's playing. Coach Wagner's doing an excellent job over there. So I'm going the Holgate Tigers.
You're going with Holgate.
I think Tri-State's going to sneak one out.
All right. Bryce had Holgate, and Matthew had Holgate as well. So, again, Tony likes to go against the grain. All right. Well, that concludes our Week 5 game predictions. Last thing we have is closing thoughts, guys. What are your thoughts going into the halfway point of the regular season?
I think for some of the fair weather fans out there, it's come down pretty close to some of the last nice games we're going to have. The temperature's starting to drop out there. Fall's hitting a little early this year, it seems like. So if you're going to get to a game, definitely get out there now and start enjoying some high school football.
Yeah, for me, looking forward to Tinora and Antwerp. Should be a fantastic game this week. And also, as we talked about our last game, Holgate and Tri-State. The 8-man is getting some love this week. So if you can't make it, you can check that game out on your local internet radio from Black Swamp.
I guess closing thoughts from me. Again, as we always say, get out there and support the kids. A lot of good games this week, but I'm really liking the cooler weather, the fall weather. Got a lot of cool gear coming from some sponsors of ours and 3 Court and BSN Sports. So get you guys some gear, and we'll cover some really good football games this coming fall/winter. So,
awesome. Tell you what, guys, it's just exciting time of year to me. I love football. Football's my favorite sport. I mean, I shouldn't say that because I'm a softball coach, but it really is. Again, it's just because it goes by so quick. So it just I don't know. It's more intense, I guess. But like you guys said, get out there and watch some games, man, because there's a lot of good games going on in the area, especially as teams start getting into conference play. There was a big game last week, Archbold and Liberty Center. A big game this week, Tinora and Antwerp. I mean, there's going to be big games each week. So
Brian, Patrick Henry.
Yeah.
Get
out there and watch a game.
Antwerp, Wapakoneta. Yeah.
And don't be afraid to visit the concession stands. I mean, I'll tell you what, we talked about this, I think, last week. We talked about
got to talk about the concession stands.
Going to Elmwood, man. Just that ribeye sandwich was so freaking good, man. I tell you what, some of these places have these, like Logan's been mentioning the fish and chips at Antwerp. So I'm going to have to try it. I'm going to have to try it. Get there early enough. As soon as the concession stand open, I might just go down and give me some fish that Logan's just been bragging about.
I'll never forget the time. We were over at Antwerp a couple seasons ago, and my dad was helping us in the press box broadcast the game. And when we had camera troubles, and I blamed him for everything, and it really wasn't his fault. So I was never so mad. I thought my dad messed something up, but it wasn't. It was the cord. Yeah. Anyways, he comes back with this little basket of fish and chips, and I'm like, where in the world did you get that from? I said, who serves that at a concession stand? He goes, I went over to the concession stand. It's pretty good. You want to try some? I tried some. I said, wow, that's really good. So we'll try that. Like you said, Elmwood, all those, what were they?
Ribeye sandwiches.
Ribeye sandwiches.
Oh my gosh.
They even had chicken fingers and stuff there. So concession stands, some of these places are going all out.
And honestly, we talked about this the other night in the booth. It's one of those things where honestly, like each school should get together and just like, hey, we're gonna do this. And
like a signature.
This. Yeah, have like their signature thing. And like, so each time you go to a school, you've got like, hey, when I go to the Elmwood, I get that ribeye sandwich, or hey, when I go to Antwerp, I can get the fish. And so you know what's coming, so you can kind of prepare yourself.
If schools put just even if you just put a little bit of effort in and you serve those items, you can make a lot of money for whatever program or sport or whatever. Even if you just roll a grill out there, you start throwing burgers and hot dogs on.
Just the smell, the aroma. Wayne Trace does that.
They do. Wayne Trace is really
that good. Grill outside the concession stand. Last year was just coming towards us the entire game.
It literally, you could smell the grill from across the field, and you just said you could smell all the smoke and see it, and it's like, man, I want to go get a burger now.
Last year they had outside underneath that little canopy. I thought it was on fire. The smoke was rolling out of there so bad. I was like, holy smokes. But yeah, that's I think it's awesome. You get out, it's kind of like people always talk about the fairs. Like certain fairs you go to have certain food. Man, that's what high school football ought to be about. Let's get out there. Everybody start developing your own little thing.
Yeah, maybe that should be a hot take for next week. Best concession stand food at football games in Northwest Ohio.
There you go.
We'll do a power ranking for it. So send in what your school's favorite or what your known item is, and we'll have to rank them here. So rank them or try them when we go to the games.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that'll be awesome. So anyways, well, that concludes our podcast. We'd like to thank all of our sponsors: 3Chord, BSN Sports, Bat Stevens Body Shop, Tinora Rams Live, Jimenez Basketball Academy, Fairchild Family Chiropractic, NWO Basketball, the Drop Zone Pizzeria, Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty, Optimal Performance Fitness, Nicely Storage and Rentals, and the Thunderdome. We would also like to give a special thanks to Jeff Batt for allowing us to use his amazing new facility here at Bat Stevens Body Shop for today's podcast. Stay tuned for the next NWO Sports Podcast in the near future, and thanks for watching.